Call the Westbrook Planning Board meeting to order. This is December 4th. We are going to start with 3 public hearings. The way we run a public hearing is we ask for a presentation, then we ask for staff comments, then I open up the public hearing. I ask anybody that wants to speak to come to the podium and give us your name and address. If there are questions, I'll note the questions and ask them after the public hearing closes. With that, site plan, 380 Main Street, H.A. Mapes Incorporated. The applicant is proposing to redevelop an existing gas station and office space to be a self-service gas station with a convenience store. Tax map 40, lot 89. The zone is residential growth area 1 and the village review overlay zone.
Good evening. Patrick Coughlin, part owner of St. Germain Collins, 846 Main Street in Westbrook. And glad to be back to give you an update on some of the changes requested in the plans that we submitted in our previous planning board meeting. I'll try to run through these quickly, but if there are questions along the way, feel free to ask. There were questions about whether the dormers would be showing drywall and paint versus bare wood rafters, and those will be drywall painted. The idea of those will they'll be letting light into the space of the store itself versus being a second floor. And we can go to the next slide. There was a concern by the board and neighbors on screening of the property, particularly along Lamb Street. So we opted for kind of a two-pronged approach. One is we went with the hornbeam tree, which is a mid-sized tree, so it's not the tallest oak. It's kind of in that middle range of height, which will then provide more of a visual buffer for the houses along Lamb Street. And then in between those, a lower shrub with northern berry, which will help to shield some of the, particularly the headlight shine from the driving areas for the neighboring houses. We can go to the next one. Those are just some of the pictures of the flowers, plants proposed for the rain garden. There was concern about incorporating as many natural features into the site as possible. So that's on the rear of the building. There's also, actually I'll show it later, so we can go to the next slide. Also associated with this, there's concern that stormwater from the site had the potential to flow onto neighboring properties. We've made sure through spot grades to keep the water on the site, and then in the rain garden in particular, we put an overflow drain added so that if the water gets up to a certain height, it will go into the stormwater system and not onto the neighbor's property. Go to the next. On the front island, we had a number of requests made for that. One is that the existing sign, which is right here, it's currently in the middle of a paved area so that it becomes a hazard for driving. We widen or deepen that front island so that that sign post is within the island, so it's less likely to be hit by a vehicle. We added some additional landscaping in that island. We're going to propose some additional bayberry bushes along the front side as well. And then we had widened the, we had also, the request was to make one-way circulation and to put signs at the entrance and the exit so it was clear for cars which way they'd enter and which way they exit the site. We also had to have a wide entrance to get onto the site, primarily to allow for circulation of the Westbrook's fire truck onto the site. But that made for a very wide opening that might be slightly confusing for cars and certainly feel large. So with the request of the planning staff, we shortened those entrances with a concrete apron. So you can drive over that apron, but it will seem to have the effect of making that entrance feel smaller. We also made sure that all the curbs had tip-down curbs and the mats to indicate for ADA. And I think we can go to the next slide. There was a comment about from town staff about the existing overhead electric line that serves the property next door on Main Street. It's required to be 15 feet above a commercial parking lot. I believe it's less than that now, but we'll verify that and make sure that the contractor relocates that line to make sure that height is met. And we go to the next one. And as I mentioned, we did show on the one of the site plans that the fire truck can make a turn onto the site and off the site in case any firefighting is needed on the site. And the next. There's also a request for as much as possible natural materials for the fencing. So for both the fences along the property boundaries to the rear and the side of the property, we're proposing a wooden board fence, and that would also be used for the dumpster enclosure. So that detail's been added to the plan. And the next. We're still working through some of the architectural and codes details. We believe that a sprinkler system will not be needed for the building. At the time we updated the site plan, the fire chief had requested an external door to access the sprinkler room. So we've provided that on the site plan, but in working with the planning staff, we are looking at we're okay with a condition of approval that details what we need to do in case we need to sprinkle it or not. So that way we will, prior to a building permit being issued, we'll resolve that issue and make sure we have adequate water supply should we need to do a sprinkler system for the building. At this point, we don't think we'll need a sprinkler system, in which case we'll go off the existing water service for the building, and we won't need the sprinkler room. And that's next slide, please. A lot of questions about the canopy. Welcome. Come on in. There's plenty of room. The canopy will remain on site, the existing canopy. The dispensers will be upgraded beneath it. The canopy will be painted but otherwise left as is. And the next slide. Certainly lighting is a concern of neighbors, and we will be using LED lights that are downward facing and they'll be shut off at closing. We're taking as many steps as we can to try to minimize any light going off the site. And that would have sound associated with them, or any outside music playing at the site at the request of the neighbors. And also no vacuum cleaners.
Number of comments that the applicant has completed, as well as if the board wishes to entertain a motion, it is stated on page 2, along with all of the findings of fact and conditions on pages 3 and 4 thereafter.
Thank you very much. At this point, we are into the public hearing portion. As I said earlier, I ask you, if you want to speak, to come up to the podium and give us your name and address, and if there are questions, I will note them and ask them after the public hearing closes. The other thing I also say at this point is I have a fast gavel. Apparently, well, Mr. Spiller.
Bill Spiller, Vice President of Discover Downtown Westbrook. I'd like to remind everyone that Main Street in downtown really starts here, and this is an important project. I think it's a well-thought-out project. I'm excited for the addition. I think it's an improvement over what's there right now, and I'm very grateful that the developers have brought this forward. And for my girlfriend watching from afar, yes, they will need a sprinkler. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Public hearing's closed. We will deal with this topic as soon as we get into our regular agenda. The second public hearing is the Middlebrook subdivision DWN Asset Management. The applicant is proposing a 7-lot, single-family cluster subdivision with 2 private ways and approximately 34-acre open space lot along Duck Pond Road. And it's tax map 21, lot 57, and the zone is residential growth area 3.
Good evening. I'm Adrienne Fine. I'm a civil engineer at Teradyne Consultants. I'm here for the Minnowbrook subdivision. I'm here with the applicant, Wayne Nelson. And this project was last here at the August 7th workshop meeting, and tonight we're here for the final approval of the subdivision. So I'll go over kind of an overview of the project since we've done the majority of the design since the last time we were here. The project site is located on the easterly side of Duck Pond Road. It's across from Old Farm Road. It is about 40 acres in size in the residential growth area 3 zone. It's currently an open field along Duck Pond Road, and then about 30 acres of forested area extends easterly. And there is a Minnow Brook through the site running from the north to the south. And there's a pond about halfway along the brook that was a man-made pond quite some time ago, but it's now within that stream setback area, so that stream and pond are protected. And the proposed development includes 2 private ways. There will be each about 250 to 300 feet long, and there will be 3 single-family residential lots on each of the private ways. They'll be approximately 30,000 square feet each. And there's also an existing lot to the south of the property right here. And that's owned by James Lombardo, so this is considered a 7-lot subdivision, the 6 new and then that 1 existing. And then approximately 34 acres of the site is going to be preserved open space that's being gifted to the Presumpscot Regional Land Trust. And they accepted that land in November, and we also went and had a meeting with the Westbrook Recreation and Conservation Commission, and they approved the open space proposal for that as well. So that's most of the forested area, including the brook and the pond that will be part of that open space. The applicant will also construct an 8 parking space paved lot right here. That's between lots 3 and 4, and that'll be accessed directly from Duck Pond Road. So that'll be so the public can access the open space without utilizing the private streets. And that will be constructed before the land is gifted. So that's part of what's going to the land trust. There's also a small abutter transfer happening right in this northern corner of the site. That's to help the abutter gain legal frontage for their lot. So the proposed private ways, there will be 2 of them. They meet the city standards, and they will have hammerhead turnarounds. There will be paved aprons for trash and recycling pickup along Duck Pond Road. And we have the 50-foot wide right-of-ways, and they extend to the stormwater management just beyond the end of the road to keep all of that on homeowners association managed land, not in the open space. So we're not proposing anything in the open space except that parking lot. The roadways will have underground electric and public water. The water's been approved by the Portland Water District. And each lot will have a private septic system. Mark Hampton, the soil scientist for the project, has found passing test pits on all of the lots. And then we'll have stormwater management provided with grass swales and culverts along the roadways, collecting water to the end of the roadways where we'll have stone berm level lip spreaders that will dissipate the water into buffer areas. One of the roadways will have a forested buffer and one will have a meadow buffer. Stormwater will flow through those and slow down and infiltrate into the ground. And then anything that flows out of those buffers will go towards the brook, and we don't anticipate any adverse effects downstream. We have no wetland disturbance proposed as part of this project, and the stormwater management features and the roadway and everything will be managed by homeowners associations. So with that, we believe this project meets the Westbrook requirements, so we're requesting final approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vine.
We have made 2 adjustments to the memo under this item. One under the project history, we wanted to just clarify that there was a site walk on August 18th. Becca right now is going to be passing out the adjustments to the first page of this item in your packet. And the other addition is comment number 1, which we received a comment from Planning Board member Joe Martin regarding the proposed firm maps, the preliminary maps that have not been accepted yet. So we have made a statement in here that all houses must be constructed at least 1 foot above the floodplain elevation, referencing the draft 2017 preliminary firm maps. Outside of that adjustment to the memo, the applicant has addressed the issues that were outstanding, and I believe that they provided a very nice presentation for you, so we have no further comment.
Thank you very much. Again, we're to the public input part. I again ask you, if you have a comment, to come to the microphone and give us your name.
It's Phil Spiller, our Westbrook Recreation Conservation Commission. Looking up my notes and reviewing from that meeting back on October 18th. A very spirited discussion that evening, and there are some exciting possibilities here, even past what's proposed this evening as far as open space and recreation. And we certainly appreciate them coming forward and doing what they have done, proposing what they are proposing for the future of open spaces in an area of the city really that kind of lacks some trails and some open spaces. So we are very excited about this project and what they're proposing as far as Westbrook Recreation and Conservation Commission goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, public hearing's closed. Third and final public hearing. Amended site plan and conditional use, Rock Row, previously called Dorigo Plaza, at 58 and 80 Main Street, the Waterstone Property Group, Jones and Beach, on behalf of the Waterstone Property Group, is proposing an amendment to the previously approved site plan for 495,915 square feet plus or minus, regional shopping center. The amendment is proposed for an 8,000 plus or minus seat amphitheater and associated parking on campus. This is tax map 42B, lots 9, 10, 11, and 14, and the zone is gateway commercial.
Chair Reedman, members of the board, my name is Jim Katsafikis. I'm the attorney with Perkins Thompson for Dirigo Center Developers and also Waterstone Retail. We're here tonight for seeking approval with regard to site plan, an amended site plan for this amphitheater, and also conditional use approval for the theater that's proposed in the Gateway Commercial District. We're also seeking overhead utility requirements because this is going to be a temporary amphitheater that we're seeking approval for. We applied back in early September for this. You've seen us on 2 occasions already with regard to workshop meetings, once on October 2nd, and then on November 6th, again with a substantially revised plan. Substantially revised in large part because of the input from this board and from the public. And so we think we've got a better plan than we came in with. It's been vetted by 3 neighborhood meetings, one which was required by your ordinance back in September, and then 2 additional voluntary hearings, one at the Westbrook Community Center back in October, and one more recently with the Nason's Corner neighborhood this month. We've met extensively with city staff to try to refine this product, to try to address standards and make sure that it's the best that we can bring before this city. So looking at the substance, it is an amphitheater. It's for 8,200 capacity. I think the staff report was 8,000. I want to clarify it's always been for 8,200 folks. It's a theater, which again is a conditional use in the Gateway Commercial District. It will be operated seasonally, so it would start from mid to late May and go to early or mid-September. The application explains in detail how we meet the conditional use standards, the site plan standards. But as a theater, just to talk about the parking waiver for a moment, the standard for a theater under your ordinance is 0.3 parking spaces per seat. We don't have seats here, but with 8,200 patrons, treating each as a seat, we're talking about a parking requirement of some 2,460 spaces. Now, we're partnering in this venture with Waterfront Concerts Live Nation, and their nationwide data shows that the attendance rate at a concert in general is an average 72%. So we propose reducing the amount of spaces here to 1,721. 1,221 of those spaces would be provided on-site, a graded lot with about 1,079 spaces, and then another 142 in a parking lot adjacent to the venue. And then there'd be parking for 500 overflow spaces provided by lease on Saunders Way. We've presented a letter of intent for a lease for those 500 spaces, and we agree to the condition of approval that's been proposed, whereby we would come in and at the start of each season prove that we have a lease in place for the requisite off-site overflow parking. The hours of operation for this venue, we'd be ending with a hard curfew of 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday, in both instances subject to a limited waiver for weather-related delays. With regard to this being a temporary venue, we came in good faith asking for approval for a temporary venue. From the very beginning, we have said that we would impose a 5-year limit on this because it's a proof of concept. Does this work? Does this venue work in this area? Please go right ahead. Does this venue work in this situation, in this site? And so that's why we proposed the 5 years. I'm aware, because I advised the planning board that they could, that Portland's planning board at least has put a temporal limit on modular classrooms was actually what happened there. And so you perhaps could put the 5-year limit. We certainly would accept a 5-year limit on the site plan approval, because this is the first step toward what we hope will be a permanent amphitheater, enclosed or partially enclosed. That's what we're working toward. That's what this concept is about. Now, the city staff has been reviewing this in great detail, and much of their attention has rightfully been directed toward public safety, particularly the crossing of Larrabee Road, and security at concerts, neighborhood impacts, safety, property, sound level impacts, and traffic impacts. So to address those concerns in greater detail, we have a team of people and a new addition that you'll meet this evening. And so I'd like to just briefly introduce who you'll be hearing from. Wayne Morrill, you've heard from before, an engineer from Jones and Beach, to talk about the overall amphitheater design and some of the changes that may have been made along the way. Steve Sawyer from Sebago Technics, talking about traffic patterns and actions to be taken to focus on the use of exit 47 for turnpike access to and from this site, and to minimize traffic impacts on Westbrook. You'll hear from the new member, Eric Reuter, who's an acoustic engineer. He'll discuss his findings regarding ambient sound levels that he measured at 4 locations that were requested by the city planner, and his modeling of the proposed amphitheater to predict sound levels and the sound impact of this venue. And you'll hear from John Dow, who'll discuss operational matters, particularly safety, security, and how sound is controlled. We believe that after you hear from them, you'll find that the Rock Row team has satisfactorily addressed the Westbrook ordinance standards and the legitimate public safety, security, noise, and traffic concerns that we've heard throughout this process. So with that, I'd like to ask Wayne Morrill to come up, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Wayne Morrill with Jones Beach Engineers. The plan that we have up in front of you today is the overall site plan for the project. As the board remembers, up on the top near Main Street, we have the previously approved Phase 1, which included the retail areas and then shops along Main Street itself. With that development, there is a signalized intersection that comes in off of Main Street, and then also a driveway that comes off of Larrabee Road across from Terminal. That came in and wraps around the site, then back out to Main Street. The amphitheater itself is utilizing a couple of driveways that were previously approved as part of the old Derigo Plaza Center. The first being the driveway off the Westbrook Arterial is in the same location, and the driveway coming across Nathan's Brook is in the same location as where it was previously approved. That was something that we wanted to maintain as part of this project because that was a major concern of DEP and through the permitting process that we went through on the original project. So it was important that we kept that driveway and the crossing in the same location. As part of this phase one, we will be crossing Nathan's Brook with the existing culvert that's currently out there. We're not going to try to do any expansion over Nathan's Brook. We're just going to combine that space. It's roughly a 30-foot crossing right now. We're going to be just putting Jersey barriers on either side, making sure it's a controlled crossing over that existing culvert. The other driveway that is in the same location is the driveway across from Saunders. This is a location that used to come into the old, we had a warehouse building out in the front, and this whole area was a parking lot that went over the old gas line and came right across here into the rest of the parking lot. It's important to note that this driveway here is for pedestrian access only. When people are parking on that off-site lot, they'll be coming down Saunders Way and coming into this pedestrian paved walkway coming in. There'll be bollards at the end of it. There'll be collapsible bollards, and that will allow emergency vehicles to be able to access this driveway if they need to come into this section of the driveway. But anybody coming in this driveway here, this is going to be for the people that are actually running the concert itself, and then our VIP and handicap parking spaces. There is roughly 142 spaces in this area. They will access off of the arterial into this parking lot and then leave through the arterial. There will be no cars going across the railroad itself. Where this crossing that exists today was the old farm crossing over the railroad, which is a paved access across there now with gates on both sides. So with the amphitheater itself, we do have a paved driveway around the entire venue. That was something that we worked on with the police and fire department to make sure that there was a safe emergency access around the entire site with gates, with knock boxes, so that at any time the police and fire department would have the ability to get to any part of the amphitheater itself. They do have an area here where they'll be able to park inside of a gated area, so they'll be able to park their vehicles and have a command center inside the venue so that anybody coming into there, police and fire have a spot that they're right at where everybody coming into the concert, they'll be right there to be able to make sure everything works correctly. As we get near the railroad crossing, there is another Knox box, gates and Knox boxes as you go across the railroad crossing. That way, when there are no concerts going off, this can be shut off and there is no cars coming into this area. One thing that you're going to hear a little bit later from Steve Sawyer from Sebago Tech is we originally indicated to the board that this driveway on the arterial was going to be a right in, right out. We've now changed that. That's going to have a stop sign at the end of it, and there'll be full access coming out of there just for these 142 spaces. And there'll be police detail to make sure that those people are able to get in and out of that driveway in a safe manner. The big parking lot that we have on North Campus is where the remainder part of Phase 2 will come through in the next couple of times that we come from the board. This is a temporary parking lot. It's going to be a gravel parking lot. It has temporary light poles around it, which are on utility poles with shoebox style full cutoff lights on those poles going around there. Everything that we're doing on that side is temporary in measure. Even the grading itself, as you go on this parking lot, there are no catch basins in here. This is not going to be parked on during the winter. It's not made to have plows pushing this. This is an area that's going to sheet flow into swales that come around into treatment swales and then into the quarry itself. Even the drainage that we're proposing to DEP is temporary in nature, where we're not adding any pipes other than the one pipe going underneath the crossing and then outside of the treatment area. This is made so that this is a nice, stable parking area. Any sheet flow coming off of this parking lot goes into the swales, and so there's no sediment runoff onto the streets or into the quarry itself with this development of this parking lot. What you can see on this plan is a lot of the ponds that are being shown here are the ponds that came from the original approval from when it used to be a warehouse. We have the 75-foot buffer, vegetated buffer along Nason's Brook, and then outside of that is a 25-foot area where only ponds can be without having any impervious surface. So we have treatment ponds for the access road coming in, which this is the same pond as what was originally approved, and then the treatment ponds along Nason's Brook to make sure that any surface flow going towards Nason's Brook gets treated and releases at the same rate as what DEP will allow. This, can you go back to that last slide? This pond right here was also part of the original approval. This is for, it's actually a lot larger than it's supposed to be, but this was for this entire parking lot sheet flowed into this area. One of the things that you see in here is what we've done is we've taken all the water that used to go into underground detention areas and it's all sheet flowing into these ponds. So what we've done is everything on this even around the amphitheater itself is temporary in nature. It's sheet flow into ponds, not underground detention ponds, not impervious surfaces. This VIP and handicap parking is paved. The loop road is paved, but then once you get in here, the access ways going along the concourse and a couple of the access ways going in, but it's not a paved amphitheater surface. As I indicated to the board a number of times, this is still going to be vegetated buffer. There is no development going on in this back south side of the campus at this point. The amphitheater itself, this being the stage, this ramps up and creates a berm going towards the railroad track. This existing berm that's along, that you drive by on Larrabee Road, that is, we're cutting into one little corner to be able to grade this parking lot. The remainder of that berm stays in place. So what we have is a tree buffer around the entire area, a berm that protects Larrabee Road, and a berm that's protected going in towards the development. Same thing as what we presented to you at the last meeting. When phase 2 comes forward, and you're going to hear about this from Josh Levy in a little bit, can you go back to this parking area that we're showing here will become parking decks, and this area becomes development. This is all gravel parking lot, temporary light poles, everything's temporary in nature so that as phase 2 comes along, we can move forward and do the parking decks and develop this area, and you'll see that. This being the lighting plan, as part of one of the things that the fire department wanted to make sure was that we had permanent lights along the rail track and permanent lights around the quarry, and we've added them along the other two sides so that the entire perimeter has lights on poles. When you get into the middle, what we'll be doing is bringing in temporary lights. They'll roll in depending on the size of the crowd. There might be only this amount of parking that's needed for a show. There'll be temporary lights in that area only. If this entire thing gets filled, there'll be temporary lights in here, so they go up, they come down after the show. They're not sitting in the middle of the parking lot the entire time they're there. One thing that we've added, can you go back? One thing that we added to the plan was the need for this driveway is now a paved driveway. As part of phase 1, what this board approved was there was a fence that came right along the back side of this pavement, which is where our loading happens as part of phase 1. It's a temporary fence that we put in as part of phase 1 so that nobody would be coming into the phase 2 area. That fence will go away once phase 2 gets developed. But what we want to make sure is a clear, defined limit to where people can go as part of phase 1 and then the amphitheater itself. So working with staff, they wanted to make sure that people coming in here did not get into this area where all the service is happening. This is now a paved roadway that creates a loop. So you could come off of Larrabee Road, come down this paved roadway, and then into the center where the cul-de-sac is without getting near any truck operations. With that change, that Phase 1 fence went from the back of that to the back of here, so that that driveway can happen. The gates with Knox boxes got moved out so that that operations can happen. I think that's everything that we did. So if there's any questions from the board, I'll try to answer it, or I'll hand it off to the next person.
Please.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Sawyer. I'm a Senior Vice President with Sebago Technics, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about traffic. For those of you who were here last time, I'm going to focus on really the large scope issues. I think Wayne has done a nice job talking about the site itself, how that circulation is going to work. Unfortunately, I apologize for the clarity of the graphics here, but to give you some orientation, the Turnpike runs down through the middle of the graphic that we're seeing here. Brighton Avenue and Main Street is here. Phase 1 that has been approved with the Market Basket project is here. This is Terminal Street, and this is the driveway that Wayne just talked about coming in off in Terminal Street with the parking lot for the amphitheater. The amphitheater being located here, Larrabee Road being here, Westbrook Arterial being here, exit 47 here, 48 here. And this is the entrance off in the Westbrook Arterial into the VIP and handicap spaces that Wayne talked about. I think one of the things that I wanted to make sure that you all understood, there was some confusion on my part last time, and I apologize for that. But we've made a concerted effort, as has been, I think, central to the entire Rock Road project. And that is, this is going to be a significant development when it's all done, said and done. And we understand the issues that exist up here at exit 48. We understand the traffic issues that exist along Brighton Avenue and Main Street. So a lot of our focus that you're going to see and throughout the development of this project in its various phases is going to be a concentration on directing people to utilize exit 47 and the Westbrook Arterial to get into the project itself. So, stream of the site at exit 47, which will direct people, it will have some messages on it that says concert venue, use exit 47, to sort of avoid this congestion that will typically exist on a weekday afternoon. And one of the things that we need to understand about this is that with a concert that starts at 7 or 8 o'clock, people start to arrive at 5 or 6 o'clock. So we would expect that entering people kind of getting off the highway or getting ready to go to a show are going to be aligned somewhat with the peak traffic times of rush hour commuters. So again, our interest here is to direct people to exit 47 in the back door, the use of Westbrook Arterial to get to the site, and to try to stay off the main drag here and over at exit 48, which we already and all understand can be congested, certainly at those peak travel times. So I'm not going to, I thought what might be helpful, that was the big change, or probably a lot of conversation that we had last time, was exactly how we're going to allow people to enter. One of the things I wanted to do also at this time, so I'm not going to get into the details of how circulation, I think Wayne did a nice job as to how people are going to specifically access the venue from the various parking lots. If you have questions, we certainly can go back to that. I've got some more detailed plans on those. We've worked those out in close coordination with police and fire, and I think they feel real comfortable that while there may be some evolution on how this is done, I think we've got a good starting point to get off on the right foot here. But one thing I wanted you to understand is not only is there a major investment being proposed for the Rock Road development itself, bordered by Main, Larrabee, and Westbrook Arterial, but there's a significant investment being made for the betterment of the city of Westbrook on off-site improvements, things that will handle in non-peak times of the development itself, general increase in mobility and hopefully safety around the city as it surrounds the development itself. And I'd like to go through those real quick, just so you have an understanding as to the commitment that Waterstone has with this project to the community itself. First of all, as you're all familiar, up here at Exit 48, we've spent about $1,700,000 at this point on improvements to that intersection. We're almost done. We've got some overhead signage that is about the last element of work that needs to be done there. The other thing that's going on, if you've passed through Exit 48 and Rand Road, is there's construction going on there. There's about $1 million being spent there, which we expect will be completed. There's an additional left turn lane coming off the turnpike, heading westbound on the arterial towards the site. So that's something that the turnpike is doing. We've actually contributed $1 million to the turnpike for that project. As Wayne indicated, there's going to be an access point here into the venue for VIP users and handicap folks. Ultimately, not necessarily as part of Phase 1, but ultimately in Phase 2 is going to be a new signalized intersection here, and that driveway, a small access road that Wayne talked about, will actually be widened into a major access point into the development in the future. Main Street and Larrabee Road both contain traffic signal improvements, lane widenings, bus stops, landscaping, a variety of improvements that this summer, or maybe I should say before, will be completed before Market Basket is allowed to open. That total cost is about $2.5 million. We've also contributed $200,000 to the City of Portland to make some improvements on Brighton Avenue. And finally, in Phase 1, over here at Forest and Stroudwater, we're going to put up some flashing beacons at a pedestrian crosswalk for the students there. That's something that we'll be doing as part of this early phase of the project. So that's about $25,000. So basically, the off-site improvements associated with what you've already approved, or Phase 1, is about $5.4 million. And there's another $1 million basically in Westbrook Arterial, this signalized entrance here, some signal retiming over here on Riverside Street, and some signal retiming on William Clark Drive over here will be happening as well as we move into the next phase of development, which is we're calling Phase 2. And as an introduction of that, I think what we'd like to do is have Josh Levy, one of the principal partners of Waterstone, talk to you a little bit about that next step, because I know one of the things that was of concern when we talked last time was we've got this big open parking lot. Wayne alluded to it a little bit. How long is that going to last? What's really the game plan here? And I think part of what we wanted to do tonight was allay your fears that indeed this project is moving along, and Josh can talk a little bit about the schedule of that and what we have in mind. Not that it influences your conversation here, but it may allay some fears that this is going to last for a long time in what we have listened to as a considerable temporary situation. We're hoping that it's temporary because it's going to be permanent soon. So, Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Sawyer.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Josh Levy from Waterstone Properties Group, and we were in front of you several months ago for an informational workshop on the vision for Rock Row, what was originally the Walmart plan, traditional retail, and how that's really evolved to a much more mixed-use project. We appreciate working together on Phase 1, which is now underway, and we hope to have open this time next year. And I just wanted to reiterate, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, that everything is still moving forward as planned. And for instance, moving the parking on site was really in response to residents, planning staff, and this board. We didn't really want to do it, but we really think it was more an accommodation, and it really does make a better project, a safer project, and better circulation. So that's the only reason that all of the parking, except for the overflow, came on to the middle campus. We still very much intend to move forward with everything we've talked about and have been exhaustively in the meantime. We've formed over 36 local community partnerships with Downtown Discover Westbrook and the Chamber and Rotary and Visit Portland, et cetera. And the Portland Trails and the dog park, everything is still moving forward on that, as well as the Colicchio Beer and Food Hall, the movie theater, Restaurant Row. This is all phase 2 that's planned. And I understand that we're not in front of you tonight for approvals on this. We are submitting December 20th for the contract zone. And with that enacted, we'll be coming right back for review under this planning board and submitting for phase 2, which, as Wayne had mentioned, our goal is definitely not to have a parking lot in the middle of phase 2. That's why it's temporary in nature. That's why we're not installing any underground utilities and overhead poles will all go underground, and I think that would be one of the proposed conditions. And eventually move the parking into permanent structures, and eventually move the amphitheater into a more enclosed situation that could be partially enclosed or fully enclosed throughout the year. Our goal is not by year 5, but sooner, and that would open it up for corporate events and otherwise. And another point that we just wanted to mention is it's not just for concerts. This is an amphitheater. We absolutely will have concerts and are planning on it. That is certainly a major part of this, but there is also theater, jazz shows, orchestra, a lot of multicultural and family events, a lot of these happening during the day and not just everything at night. But our goal is to get that to be more of a permanent structure. And I really can't stress enough what a key driver this amphitheater is for us to be able to execute on Rock Row, whether it's the movie theater or the beer and food hall or restaurants and everything else. And I just also wanted to mention that we're going to be back in front of you many times. We really look forward to that. This is certainly not the end of it, and there'll be a lot of points for discussion both with the board and with the community. And I know this is a big ask, and I know this is new to Westbrook and to this specific site, and that we're asking a lot. But I want to stand here today and assure you that we care very much about what happens here. We plan to have residents on site. We have other businesses planned for here. This represents an enormous investment for us already, and I can assure you through our operating agreement and our lease with Live Nation Waterfront, we have very, very tight controls, and nobody wants to see this happen better than us. And we know we're going to be back in front of you many, many times for the years to come. So we appreciate that, and we look forward to coming back as this progresses. And thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize. I'd like to introduce Eric Reuter, if that's okay, from Reuter Associates. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Eric Reuter, Reuter Associates in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I'm an acoustical consultant. I have about 20 years of experience doing environmental noise and building noise control projects. I've done several hundred environmental noise, community noise impact projects over that time. I'm a board certified member of the Institute of Noise Control Engineering, and also an associate professor at Berklee College of Music, where I've taught acoustics for about 19 years. I was brought onto the team about 3 weeks ago to address some specific issues related to community noise impact that were brought up by both the community and the planning department. And my scope is really in 3 parts. 2 of them are complete at this point, and 1 is proposed for the future. First, to measure some existing sound levels at 4 locations that were identified by the planning department. Second, to model sound levels from the proposed sound reinforcement system for the venue. And then, as the venue, if approved, operates, I'll be on board to do analysis and reporting and provide continuing expertise for the community noise impact related issues. Next slide, please. There's a couple of things. I'm going to be presenting some data here, so I wanted to explain first, as I'm sure you know, the sound levels, sound pressure levels are generally presented using decibels, which is a scale that relates to the way that humans perceive sound level. And to take that a step further, we're going to be looking at A-weighted sound levels. A weighting compensates for the way that humans hear frequency, low frequency relative to high frequency relative acuity. And so we apply a correction to the raw data that are measured in order to come up with A-weighted levels, which describe the way that a human would perceive sound level. And there are a lot of different metrics and statistics that we can use to measure and analyze sound. The one that we're going to be looking at here is called equivalent sound level, LEQ, or in this case specifically LAEQ, the A-weighted equivalent sound level. And equivalent sound level is an average over time, and that time can be any interval, a second, a minute, an hour, a year. And LEQ has been shown to correlate well with human perception of sound and dose response measurements of annoyance. Maine DEP uses 1 hour LEQ for their analyses for the most part. This is impossible to read even from where I'm standing, but it's in your packet. This is kind of probably a familiar thermometer type chart that shows A-weighted sound levels ranging from 0 at the top down to 180. We really only perceive sound safely up to about 100 or so in here, or 120 before we lose perception of pitch. So these are sort of sounds you wouldn't want to experience, but this gives some kind of references for sound levels that you might encounter in day-to-day life. So the first task was to measure existing sound levels at 4 locations that were identified by the planning department. These locations were identified the Monday of Thanksgiving week, and really the only time that they could be measured between then and now was that evening because of the holiday and the constraints of having to submit the data. So I went out and measured between about 8 and 9:30 p.m. 20-minute samples at the 4 locations. These are the locations that were identified. Forest Ave, I picked the location closest to the proposed theater, which is at the intersection of Rochester. The end of Colonial Ave, which is the closest residence to the venue. Deer Hill Ave, and then Taft, which is the closest residential location that's in Nason's Corner. And these levels here are the 20-minute LAEQs. 1 hour LAEQs would be substantially similar to these given the nature of the sources of these environments. Next slide. The next 4 plots here are time history plots of those 20-minute samples. So this is 0 to 20 minutes here with each vertical interval is a minute. And this shows the 1 second LEQ trace. And then the dashed line here is the overall LEQ, 20-minute LEQ that was presented on that previous slide. And these graphics are also in the memo that I submitted about a week ago. This is the second location, Colonial Ave. Much less variation here. The individual events that we see are generally car pass-bys. And at the end of Colonial Ave doesn't really have any local traffic at that hour, so being a dead end, so the car pass-bys are mostly on Main Street. This is at Deer Hill Ave, number 15, it's 2 or 3 houses up, Deer Hill Ave from Main Street. So these are vehicle pass-bys on Main Street. There were a couple actually on Deer Hill Ave. And finally at Taft, there's a lot more noise at this location from the interstate than at the others. But again, these are vehicle pass-by events on Taft Avenue. The next task is to try to estimate the impact of an actual concert event from the venue. The equipment that will be used includes loudspeakers from L Acoustics, the manufacturer L Acoustics. And these are line array loudspeakers. John Dow is going to talk a little bit more about what that means and how they can be configured in a bit. But line array loudspeakers are essentially infinitely configurable arrays of loudspeakers where angles and heights and a number of different parameters can be can be varied in order to optimize coverage within a venue and minimize coverage outside of the venue. And it makes for a very complicated source to model. Typically, if I were going to model an environmental noise impact from a point source like a piece of air conditioning equipment on the roof of a grocery store, or a rock crusher, or traffic or something of that nature, I would use a model that conforms to the ISO 9613 standard for outdoor sound propagation. And that standard includes not only divergence, which is just the general reduction in sound with distance, but also things like air absorption, attenuation from intervening topography and buildings, foliage, things of that nature. The software that we used to do this modeling, or that I used to do this modeling, was actually the L-Acoustic Sound Vision software, which is intended to optimize coverage at a very short distance within a venue. So it will model out to long distances, I went out to 5,000 feet, but it doesn't take into account any of these other factors that ISO 9613 includes. And so the output at distance is inherently conservative. All of these other factors further reduce sound levels. So the plot that I've generated and that we submitted is this conservative estimate based on the configuration of the sound system as it has been used at the state pier. It's the same equipment that would be used here, but not optimized for this venue. So we haven't gone to any, we're not at the point yet where we can optimize it for this specific area. And these sound levels indicate the worst case based on an assumed sound level at the front of house mixed position of 105 dBA. So these contours show 5 dB increments as we move out away from the source. Now, if this were a point source, omnidirectional source that radiated sound equally in every direction, then these would be perfect circles, but the shapes here indicate the directional characteristics of these loudspeakers, and those will change slightly as we optimize. Here's an overlay of the measured sound levels at the locations, the same numbers that we presented earlier. And so the highest sound levels that we're projecting in this conservative estimate, about 55 dBA at the closest homes. And that is up here in the sort of light traffic, air conditioner, refrigerator range to give you a sense of what those sound levels relate to. And again, those are outdoor sound levels. We would expect 15 or 20 dB attenuation as you go into a building as well. As I've mentioned, the sound system needs to be optimized for this particular venue, which will further allow us to tweak these coverages, both inside and outside, positive inside and negative outside the venue. So we'll be producing an optimized model prior to the season, and then as the season begins and we get through the first few shows, we'll be able to tweak that to improve it further. Next slide, please. So before I go to this next task, just to summarize the first two, we had sort of a short time frame to get any sort of monitoring done. The monitoring that we did was during, or that I did was during, or immediately after the first snowstorm of the year, so the traffic conditions weren't what they would be certainly in the summertime. So we believe that both of these estimates are conservative, and that we expect the noise in the environment, the existing noise in the environment, to be somewhat higher in the summer months, and the sound from the PA system when we include topographic shielding and structures and the actual grading on site to be smaller and close the gap even further than the graphics suggest. So as we go into the season, the planning department's asked us to install permanent monitors or semi-permanent monitors that would be installed to begin running in the beginning of May and run through the entire season. So a few weeks prior to the season and then throughout the season. These monitors would be at or near the positions presumably that have been previously requested. We have to find positions where we have permission to put monitors and power and that sort of thing, but we're reasonably sure that we can get them close to those desired locations. And the data would be collected 24 hours a day and be available to the city. And we'll use the data prior to the season to establish those existing conditions, which one of the permit conditions will be based on the existing conditions at these locations. And then throughout the season, we'll be able to monitor both continuously during shows and also look at trends as we hone in on an optimized system. Next slide. The plan department in the memo to you has recommended that the limits be 55 dBA or 5 dBA over the existing background, whichever is higher. One of the things that we're asking tonight is that you change that to 10 dBA over existing background. This is consistent with what's done in Bangor, and the Maine DEP uses a 10 dBA over background as their criteria for impact. And we believe this is a more applicable and consistent limit. So this would be at any residential receptor. And we would monitor this, of course, with the long-term monitors and the permanently installed monitors, but could also do monitoring at specific locations on a case-by-case basis if needed. Reporting, what we propose for reporting is that I would produce a report after the first 3 events to show how the season started and any improvements that were made, and then a summary report at the end of the season. And the monitor data, again, will be available to the city at any time. So certainly any data can be accessed. It's just we're proposing to produce these formal reports. And I believe that's it. I would be happy to entertain questions, or I can introduce the next presenter.
Would you introduce the next presenter, Mr. Royer?
Next is John Dow from Waterfront Concerts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is John Dow, and I'm here representing Waterfront Concerts. I want to start by thanking you all for thoughtfully considering this for the past few months. What I'd like to do tonight is address feedback from our November Planning Board meeting and speak to the 3 primary concerns we've noted consistently throughout this process. The first point, I'd like to address is oversight. Last time we met here, there was concern expressed about this permit being a permanent seal of approval with limited recourse. I would say that your city manager has done a fantastic job setting exceptionally stringent standards, ensuring that this is not the case. I would look at this operating parameters slide and review it a little bit to get into that. From this graph, it appears in defining the permit-related oversight that Westbrook is required for this venue, city staff intends to regulate this venue near or occasionally above the standards that Portland imposes on their public parks, specifically the Main State Pier. Many of your past questions have been in comparison to our main competition on the other side of city lines, Thompson's Point. And as you can see, Thompson's Point really has none of the restrictions that are proposed for this venue. They're not confined to a curfew. They choose to end roughly at 10 and 11, but they're not required to. They operate without any city oversight, and their city-funded sound monitor is actually 70 feet behind the stage. And in a few slides, I'll show you how effective that truly is. There's no event limit per week at that venue. There's no command center, and their noise penalty is actually based on an unattainable level at their mix position. And again, that's not a complaint. We're looking to work with these standards just to see what we're at in terms of a comparison. There is one request that I would like to make tonight that would make this venue viable for us. We are asking the board for relief from the condition of 16 shows per year and 2 shows per week after 2019. We fully appreciate 2019. It's a pilot year. This is an unproven concept, and it's all based on the ability for police to provide adequate coverage to the rest of the city. So again, for that reason, this year, 16 show cap, 2 shows per week, that's totally understandable, and our total show count may in fact be less than 16. We're proposing probably 10 to 12, maybe more if the excitement really builds. But for 2020 and beyond, as we've originally stated all along, we really do need to be able to scale that up to a maximum of 30 shows per year. Not entirely. We've gone anywhere from 18 to 26 so far in Portland, and a cap of 3 shows per week after we continue through 2019. And a brief conversation with Police Chief Roberts last week, I believe the goal of 30 shows per year is achievable by securing mutual aid from neighboring communities, and that could be confirmed by the end of 2019. We don't necessarily need to confirm that tonight, but we will 100% need that for this venue to be viable beyond 2019. So with all this said, I mean, we appreciate that everyone's acting in the spirit of public interest, and we're very committed to being good neighbors and respectable venue operators. So we're willing to meet these standards proposed, which again are very much in line with the Maine State Pier and significantly more restrictive than what's currently happening at Thompson's Point. I look forward to pleasantly surprising Westbrook PD and city staff this year in 2019. And following hopeful approval tonight, I'll put a primary focus on continuing follow-up with city staff and confirming that their needs are met prior to the season start. We want to ensure that we enact mutually agreeable protocols for security based on all of our tried and true methods in Bangor and East Providence and most of what we do at the pier. I see security as a critical item in ensuring concert goers first want to see a show at our venue and second feel safe enough to come back. I will say that we were the first promoter in Maine, over the objection of Portland City staff, to institute metal detectors and a clear bag policy in our venues, and we're the only promoter in Maine to consistently use them. Frankly, I understand the need to provide protections for the city from an unproven concept, which this venue is. But I hope after year one, we prove that Waterfront Concerts shares the same goals, mitigates our acoustic impact, and that we've operated responsibly enough that the city is comfortable reducing a couple of these restrictions to be consistent with what the city of Portland feels is appropriate for Thompson's Point. If I go on to the next slide, please. So looking beyond operational control and specifically to controlling our audio dispersal, last month when we were here, I was up at this podium at roughly 11 p.m. I didn't want to take too deep a dive into how we can adjust the PA to steer audio in response to concerns, but I think I got time to do that tonight. So looking at the picture on the right here, we have the physical ability to take every speaker in the stack exterior. We have the ability to steer it horizontally, left and right, at various angles to ensure that we're directing sound into the venue where we want it and not where we don't. In addition to that, we can physically change the sound pattern by changing first the audio level coming from each speaker and the angle of each speaker. So there's 14 feet of elevation change from the stage to the back of the venue. These aren't sitting on a stage shooting straight out, they're in a J configuration. So we're aiming audio into the venue and very much able to steer it where we want it, and again, away from where we don't. As Mr. Ruder pointed out, we use L Acoustics PA, and we spent over $1 million on that a couple of years back specifically to operate in the city of Portland. Where we're no longer confined to an 80-foot wide by 300-foot long pier, we have a lot more runway to do what we need to do to meet the standards you set here in Westbrook. Moving on to the next slide, please. Thank you. A number of concerns have been raised regarding traffic routing and local impact. I can't stand here and say with a straight face that we won't be seen or heard. As part of a massive project in a continually growing region, there's bound to be some impact. But as you've heard from Mr. Sawyer, we've spent a lot of internal resources planning ingress and egress to these events and ensuring that the 30 days per year that we plan to operate, we are working as hard as possible to minimize our presence. I think we all understand that the grand vision of Rock Row, as it builds out, will relieve these issues as we grow. There'll be on-site parking decks and a number of other mitigating factors. Waterstone, they've spent millions of dollars through Westbrook already improving infrastructure, and they're committed to spending far more to clean up access to this site, which by default improves residents' access through this part of the city. With a 2020 proposed cap of 30 shows, over 80% of the commutes home will be drastically improved over the current 2018 situation. Even more, considering we really prefer to host shows on the weekends, not alongside commuter traffic. So we'll also incentivize ride sharing and carpooling to the maximum extent possible. For us, this is insurance to that people who've enjoyed adult beverages at our shows can get home safely, That's a key to our safe and successful operation in Bangor. We'll be providing a dedicated pickup and drop-off lane near the venue, which further incentivizes Uber, rideshare, Lyft, any of these services, because you can get in and get out faster than someone who drives in. We'll incentivize this on our social media accounts, showing how it saves time arriving and leaving. Let's see, following a study of our first few shows, we'll further incentivize traffic mitigation programs as necessary. We also work with Google, Waze, Uber, Apple Maps to steer traffic towards exit 47 and not at 48, which is, again, a prime concern we've heard. Rock Row, the Waterstone team has developed a great relationship with Metro in providing bus access. We're excited to jump on that as well. And the future plans that I think we've all seen on some level or another show even the potential of rail traffic into the venue, which we're very excited about. Our venue is proposed. It has the most on-site parking of any outdoor venue in Maine, and we've pushed as much parking on-site as possible to ensure the majority of our end-of-show out traffic is coming from one point. This is for safety. This is also for local traffic, for those that choose to come home at 10 or 11 p.m. The first and last thing a concertgoer remembers about a show is how long it took to get in and how hard it was to get out. Rock Row and Waterstone, they provide a significant parking advantage over any Portland-based venue, and this was actually a key driver of our push to leave the Portland venue, as we all know traffic in Portland. Maximizing this benefit by creating the best traffic control plan possible is one of the primary keys to our success. Let's see. So we're looking at proximity here. I'd like to take a moment to compare our Bangor, Portland, and Westbrook project to what we're proposing here. Looking at Bangor, we're 800 feet away from our nearest neighbor. This is the Darlings Waterfront Pavilion. This is Main Street, Shaw's, the neighbors. So a number of neighborhoods around. The Main State Pier, we're 800 feet away from one of our most vocal neighbors who lives on that new apartment complex on one of those piers. If we look at the next slide, we're pretty excited about Westbrook, specifically because we're over half a mile away from our nearest neighbor. This is it's a direct merge from the L-Acoustic software onto our site plan. A little more colorful than Mr. Reuter's, but same concept. We're looking to really control all of our audio impact in the first quarter mile of the venue. And really, it should be very limited beyond that, the way it's modeled. And again, considering the way this is modeled, it's built as if it's on a flat plane. We know there'll be a number of considerations for the venue. The way this is designed, it's as if you're standing at your house looking at the speaker and not considering anything else in the way. So let's see. Compared to Portland, we've operated 103 dBA in our mixed position there, which again is under 800 feet from the nearest neighbor. Bangor is 110 dBA at their mix, which is again 800 feet from the nearest neighbor. And Thompson's Point operates without any sort of limit. We're hoping to sort of bridge the gap there. So starting on the low side of things, I just really wanted to give you guys a feel for what you're really going to see in terms of length of operation. I picked two of our shows, one at the Main State Pier, one at our Bull Point Park venue, to show a low and high side of what you would expect to see from an artist. Lee Bryce at the Main State Pier was a Wednesday night show. He didn't have a local opener. I have mixed feelings about that, but he didn't. And what we really saw there, you have opener music, you have doors music, you have set change music, then you have headliner music. Usually the opening artists and the headliner have very similar dB levels, but what you're normally going to see, Lee Bryce, for example, you saw 75 minutes of 85 dBA noise, sound, music, and 105 dBA for 120 minutes. So really you're only getting 2 hours of music on an event day on a show like that. Now, on the high side of things, we had OAR at Bull Point Park. They're a jam band. They like to stand up there and they rock on for 2 hours straight as a headliner, which is impressive to me. But we saw an hour and 45 minutes at 85 dBA between doors, the openers, changeover, the next artist. And we saw 3 hours and 45 minutes at 105 dBA. Again, I mean, it's not excessive considering that's what we consider an event day. And you're not spending, 5 hours just getting the chorus to Thunderstruck blasted at your house. It's really a mix, and it's not all at peak. So moving on to the next slide. Even with all the mitigating factors we have working in our favor, we're not going to be all things to all people. So for that reason, we continually monitor audio impact, and I think Mr. Reuter hit that pretty hard, so I'll skip some of that. But this slide here shows all of our complaints in the city of Portland in 2016. Now, we use this data to further refine our equipment levels and reduce our impacts on the neighbors. So what I can do is stand here and say that as we plot this and as we compare it to the events, by show, by weather condition, by angle to PA, by PA used, we can further refine the data and further improve the product. And what I can tell you now is that every year it's notably better than the year prior. That's why we continually get our permits in Portland. That's why we've always gotten them in Bangor. And anyone who's on the operations side of this sees improvement, and that's what we plan to do here in Westbrook. While we're more than comfortable that we will not operate in violation of the DEP standard, we will model these complaints, review the data, and monitor the readings to continually perfect the angles we operate our PA at. So looking at our final slide here. Year one's going to be a learning experience, but as the site loads, we gain additional data points. I know we'll continually improve in all areas of operation, just as we've done in Bangor and Portland, from sound to parking to security to general operations. And as we said all along, our long-term goal is to prove the viability of this site in the short term so that we can get to a semi-enclosed venue after this 5-year trial, or even before that if the financials make sense. Live Nation continues to trend toward building these semi-enclosed venues, and personally I can't wait to operate one. So to that end, I'm again just asking for 2 small adjustments to the current recommendation to make this viable. I asked for an adjustment from the 16 event limit after 2019 because we need that to be financially viable. And second, as Mr. Reuter stated, we would really prefer to have the DEP standard apply as it's very consistent with what we already have. And it's something we know we can achieve. We take these fine structures and these operating conditions very seriously, and I don't want to set myself up to fail. I want to operate in compliance while ensuring that we're good neighbors. We look forward to growing with Westbrook, and after spending 4 years on the Main State Pier, I'm personally beyond excited at the opportunity to be a part of this grand vision Waterstone has for this venue. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've taken a lot of your time. I want to thank you for listening to the presentation. To wrap it up, we ask the Planning Board to grant the application for amended site plan approval, for the application for conditional use for the theater, to grant the waiver to reduce the number of parking spaces down to 1,721 spaces, to grant a waiver for overhead parking lines. And as you heard from Mr. Reuter and from Mr. Dow, we ask that the conditions of approval be revised. For condition 7B, with regard to the frequency and level of events, we've always said that we would do fewer in the first year. So up to 16 events and no more than 2 in any 7-day span for the first year, for 2019, is consistent with what we've said from the beginning before this board. But for this to become financially viable, we need a commitment that we're able to go forward in future years. And so we ask that there be that the limit be increased to up to 30 events, and that the frequency be up to, give us the option of up to 3 events in any 7-day span for the years 2020 and thereafter. We also ask that the board change what's been recommended by the planner, which is the greater of 55 decibels A-weighted or 5 decibels A-weighted above the above ambient noise to 10 decibels A-weighted, which is consistent with what DEP has allowed as an exception to the site law for the Bangor facility. Certainly, we are going to be meeting with the city, with staff, with neighbors. We're committing to constantly reviewing the progress of this facility and its operation to make sure that it meets the targets. But we do need that relief in order to make sure that this is financially viable and we can move it forward to a permanent facility. So with that, I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Katsifikis.
I just want to touch on just quickly, just so that it is clear that staff did hear the comments that were raised by the public during the last meeting. We felt that in order to be responsive to those comments, as well as doing our own due diligence on this project, that we needed to ensure that what we were creating here would be in the best interests of the city of Westbrook. To that end, we reached out to Portland to meet with their planning department, Tuck O'Brien, the city planning director, the director of public assemblies, facilities, Andrew Downs, their legal staff representing them. They were very kind to allow us to come and meet with them so that we could ask them what has their experience been with concerts in Portland, and what things would we be looking towards to make sure that this was a success in Westbrook moving forward for us. Some of the comments that were raised were relative to Thompson's Point, in that, as you saw, there was a lot of areas in which that Thompson's Point did not have any level of standards provided, and they did find that that is a problem for them. So we were very cognizant of that and felt that we needed to reflect standards in our approval to make sure that we were protecting the citizens of Westbrook. And at the end of the day, we really want this to be a successful project. So to that end, staff did look at the sound study, and we wanted to try to create parameters that we felt that were initially what we could live with, understanding that we're still in the early phases right now of what we know. I understand that DEP says that 10 decibels above ambient is acceptable to them, but right now we don't know if that's acceptable to Westbrook. So what we've tried to come back with is a middle ground solution that if we go through a year and we determine that we could go upwards of 10 dBA, then I think at that time then the applicant has every right to come back on any of these conditions and make adjustments or suggestions that we all feel is still in the best interest of the city. So on sound, that was the presentation that we have provided to you on that piece. On the events per week, we have consulted with city staff as it relates to our resources. We do have some significant concerns about what we have for internal resources as well as mutual aid. We have our branches of our divisions here, both for police and fire, that are here for your comments and questions. If you would like for them to provide any further clarification. The team has said that at this point, we're just not sure what we have available for our resources to be able to conduct the security and the oversight that we feel is necessary. So after review, we feel at this point that 16 is our first shot at this year. We do not feel at this time that it's something that we could say immediately after year one that 30 is going to be okay. We have to go through a year, and we need to determine what that number is. In discussions with Portland, they were maxed out when they hit 26. So again, looking at our resources and what we have available, we just needed to assure that whether or not we can actually handle 30. That's what's being asked of us. And if the community of Portland was having some concerns about 26, well, what could happen to Westbrook? So that has been sort of what we have been uncovering in our background to make sure that we are proceeding to have a successful project. Additionally, you will see that we have put in here a oversight individual that will be paid for by the developer. We're calling it an events compliance position, so that that person will view what's going on during the course of a concert to ensure that the standards that we are setting are actually going to be upheld, and if there are issues, that those issues are then brought to the attention of the Live Nation individuals, and that they are addressed immediately. So we have determined that we need a person that is going to be here on behalf of the city. It cannot be a member of FD or PD, because they need to be caring about the public's interest. We need somebody who is specifically going to be looking at the compliance components as have been set forth with this application. To that end, we have also included penalty provisions, which we hope we never have to enact. But they are there, again, as the safeguard to ensure that what we have stated here, that will actually be what they are held to. Where we have all the staffers here this evening, I'll just open it up to see if any of the other department heads wish to provide any further comment on this application.
Andy Turgot, Fire Chief. At this point, we feel that we can handle 16 concerts. If in fact the planning board decided to do more, that's something we would have to evaluate, but in year one, from a staffing standpoint, human resource standpoint, we feel there would be no issues with that. Moving forward, that's something we would have to discuss.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Chief Janine Roberts, Westbrook Police Department. In regards to the ability for the Westbrook Police Department to provide the public safety component in the presence of officers during the months of May through September, it would be challenging. We have a 41-person force when we're fully staffed and nobody's injured. Summertime is typically when people take vacation. It's also when there's a significant amount of construction that's going on in the city. And by city ordinance, there are 13 different roads within the city that we have to have police officers on if there's construction being worked on it and it's not City of Westbrook Public Works projects. So, and officers can be forced to work those traffic jobs. My ultimate primary goal is to have my officers aware and alert so that they can appropriately protect and serve the citizens of Westbrook. Mr. Dow was accurate in my conversation with him earlier last week that I do support the program. I also have concerns about the capacity for the Westbrook Police Department to provide the necessary support. He talked about an estimated max of 12 officers in order to provide security for a particularly potential raucous crowd. Even with the standard 3 or 4 over the course of 3 a week, even with 16 of them, I'm going to need to rely on Greater Westbrook Police Departments to help cover. I'm very confident whether that's 1 or 2 officers or more. I have plans in January. There's a every other month meeting that the District 2 chiefs, which is Cumberland County, get together. And I have requested to be on the agenda for that month for one of the items being the mutual aid and how that might look. And certainly we'd have to work through the logistics of memorandum of understandings and have the cities and towns' respective legal authorities look at whatever we might draft up or have them draft it for us, but to figure out how we're going to share those potential responsibilities with Westbrook being the lead. I do think it's doable. I also certainly have an experience with Portland PD prior to my time here in Westbrook. Portland PD is 4 times the size of Westbrook. And they have better, certainly the volume of officers that they can put to public events such as concerts. We've talked about the traffic component and have worked out quite a few details with the developers of how we would transition and safely control the traffic flow of vehicles and pedestrians to and from the concert venue, working with whatever concert venue staff they may have. Very adamant that the concert staff or any type of security that they may hire will not replace Westbrook police officers or police officers from the area. Certified police officers, I guess, is the best way to put it. I would expect that there would always be somebody from Westbrook working the detail. And regarding the fact of our Westbrook Police Department's command staff, there are 3 of us. There's 2 captains and me. And we anticipate, at least for the first year, making sure that one of the 3 of us are present for the shows so that we have first-person knowledge and experience of how things are running. And recognizing that one of us always has to be responsible to be available for the city at 24/7 anyway. So in my discussions with Mr. Dow, we talked about looking at the end of 2019's concerts and events process to see how did it work. In the meantime, having me work with my respective chiefs in even Sheriff Joyce from Cumberland County, to have something in place, ideally for May, for us to open up this coming summer, but certainly to figure out how could we possibly accommodate upwards to 30 events in a really 4.5-month span of time. And I think those are the points right off the top of my head that I wanted to bring up. I might have more as we continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
I thank you, Daniel Stevenson. I'm the Economic Development Director for the city. So with respect to city staff, anything dealing with public safety or the concerns you've heard from any of the staff above, certainly deferring to any comments the police chief will have. I just want you to know from an investment standpoint, the significance of having the approval tonight with what's before you with the conditions as set forth by the planner and staff, I think will meet any of the standards that you'll find moving forward to get this thing kicked off. I wholeheartedly support this project. I think one of the takeaways as well is, and I'll talk more at public hearing, but is to consider strongly, perhaps even at a later date, them coming back with the 30 and the 3, but only under, the recommendation of certainly the police chief and other staff to make that, to accommodate that. I think that's important from a cash flow standpoint in subsequent years. But certainly tonight, what's before you, I wholeheartedly support. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Chief?
Yes, thank you. I told you I remember something. I do want to address, especially with the public here and for the board, the noise dynamic. I would bet a year's salary we are going to receive complaints about the volume of noise from the acts that are performing, from the traffic, from the volume of traffic. As to how many and how unreasonable it is, that remains to be seen. The dynamic of what I saw in the presentation of the decibels in the areas that were tested, and it being vehicle traffic. The fact that vehicle traffic is intermittent versus constant or consistent volume of music over your television, over your child trying to get to sleep. So I anticipate that our public safety dispatch is going to receive those types of calls. I absolutely support working with the developers and the waterfront promotions, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the exact title right now, to try to resolve those issues, but the reality is that we're going to have some unhappy residents here in the city of Westbrook and the city of Portland as to how many and how they impact your decisions, the council's decisions, and the operations of how we move forward is unknown. But the reality is we're going to have some people that are going to be impacted by these operations.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We get to the point where I'm going to open up the public hearing. Again, if you want to make a comment, I would ask you to come to the podium and give us your name and your address. With that, if there are questions, I will note the questions and ask them after the public hearing closes.
Chair Reedman, members of the board, my name is Jason Olmstead, owner of Easy Aquariums. I'm here talking in favor of Waterstone Properties Group and the amphitheater at Rock Row. As I've had the opportunity to work with Waterstone over the past year and a half on a potential, a unique venue to go into Rock Row as another anchor for this facility and this community that's being built here. And from my time with everyone at Waterstone, Josh Levy and all the partners over there, it's come to my understanding the importance of community for Waterstone and to try and be part of the community that their developments are going into. And I have no doubt in my mind that Waterstone is very capable of pulling this off and addressing the concerns of the community and of the board, and as well as doing it in a responsible manner that is good for the city of Westbrook and for the community around.
Thank you. while you're coming up. I have two documents that were given to us tonight. The staff has copies for the record. One is from Row Ford Sales over the signature of Wally Camp Jr. The other is a memo to the planning board from, excuse me if I ruined the name, Susan Solosky, a resident of Robin Avenue. We'll just add those to the record. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board, my name is Ed Suslovic. I'm a program manager with the New England Environmental Financing Center at the Cutler Research Institute at the Edmund Muskie School of Public Service at the University of Southern Maine. I've just used half my allotted time now. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I just wanted to get up. The Environmental Finance Center has been engaged with the Waterstone groups to advise the developers in terms of how to make this project overall more sustainable. And we use the three-legged stool of sustainability, environmental, economic, and community equity. So there's two key points that have come up tonight that I just wanted to touch on. Be wicked brief while doing so. It's been a long night for you all. Two key issues on the concert venue that affect sustainability. One is obviously traffic, and the other one is noise in terms of off-site impacts, what flows off the site. In terms of traffic, I will say that a big part of my role in this has been working with the developer to bring together all of the transit agencies here in Greater Portland, and in fact in Southern Maine, to work on how can we make this project the most transit-oriented development certainly in northern New England, and reduce the number of single occupancy vehicle trips. And I will tell you that we just had a meeting on Friday with 11 different public sector agencies, all of which are contributing financially as well as their expertise to a feasibility study on how we can really make this a multimodal transit hub, which would serve the concert venue as well, obviously. So I just want to let you know the entire transportation infrastructure in Southern Maine is committed to working on this. Certainly as a board member of the Metro, I'm excited to see with the Husky line going right through here, with the new Route 3 going to the transit hub in Westbrook. Isn't it nice to have a transit hub in Westbrook? People being able to change. I think the potential for concert goers to be able to take the Metro to these concerts is really significant. As far as the noise, I just want to share, I have a fair amount of experience. I was the city councilor in Portland when Thompson's Point was permitted, so I chaired all the neighborhood meetings around that. I also chaired for 7 years the Portland Westbrook, Maine Airport Noise Advisory Committee. That's what PWM, Portland Westbrook, Maine. And I will say that one of the things I learned from that is that noise is, Chief Roberts said, I have no doubt that there will need to be an awful lot of communication ongoing in order to resolve noise issues. And certainly we learned that at the Jetport. It's important to have good communications so that people who feel they're affected by noise have a way of reaching out directly and getting information right back. The idea of being able to have the noise monitoring, for example, available so someone can go online and check and see what is the decibel level in my neighborhood right now, for example. That might be something that's helpful. And certainly what came up at the Nason's Corner neighborhood meeting, which was well attended, there were about 75 people that came to that meeting, was the commitment to meet regularly between all the stakeholders. And that's city staff, that's the developers and concert promoters, and that's the neighbors, to meet regularly, not just, let's schedule those meetings now, in a sense, and midway through the first season to say, okay, we had that first, the initial report that the engineer reported to. Let's sit down and talk about that. How did that, this is what the report says. How did you experience that report? And then let's meet again towards the end of the season. We're going to have to continue to fine-tune this. Good communications is going to be important, and that commitment was certainly expressed by the developers. So I'll stop there, but I appreciate your time. I just wanted to fill in that background. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Slotzik.
As always, a tough act to follow, and I actually sat on that 20-year sustainability board with him, and he's a great chairman of projects like that, and he did a great job at the Nason's community meeting the other day. Phil Spiller, again, Vice President, Discover Downtown Westbrook, member of the Westbrook Recreation Conservation Commission, and Westbrook's representative on Visit Portland as well, which is the former Greater Portland Convention and Visitors Bureau. I've got a couple letters. One of them I'll just read some excerpts from. I had written a long letter, but I had knowing that I now was going to make it tonight. I initially wasn't. I was actually off flying, and it's Portland Westbrook Municipal, not Portland Westbrook, Maine. That's what PWM stands for. And I was the ALPA, Airline Pilots Association representative on that board. But I'm here tonight, and I'm here because this is an important topic before the Planning Board and the City of Westbrook and the greater Portland region as well. I'll read excerpts of what I had written initially. I had met the Waterstone team in the summer of 2017 after they had taken over from the Walmart centric type of development. Immediately, conversations turned towards what can we do better here in Westbrook. I was immediately impressed by the developers. Is there something else that Westbrook needs besides retail? Conversations quickly turned to things like business services, medical, automotive, banking, potential entertainment, some unique restaurants, some things that really weren't in the fabric of the community that would really make Westbrook a go-to place. After some of those initial meetings, in early October, we started talking about a potential concert venue, and I took a leap of faith. I sent a late night Sunday email, October 9th it was Columbus weekend, 9:41 p.m., and I sent that to the local arm of Live Nations and immediately got a response. And I'll read you that email. Wondering if you might have a chance tomorrow to connect for a few minutes. I have an interesting potential new site for you on the border of Westbrook and Portland, which could be unlike any venue in America. The possibilities of this project and your potential inclusion in it are beyond amazing. So 2 weeks later, on October 25th, we got together on site, and I was surrounded by visionaries, true visionaries. It's often said visionaries not only believe that the impossible can and should be done, but it must be done. If you want to put it into the local flavor of this statement, I've heard somebody actually saying, a local visionary I know, instead of saying, why Westbrook, somebody saying, why not Westbrook? Isn't that right, Mr. Daniel? Why not Westbrook? I know it's hard to picture here in this setting tonight, but if you imagine for a minute, close your eyes, you're now in the middle of a former quarry. It's the summer of 2017, you have a blank canvas in front of you. 100 acres of essential wasteland. You faintly hear, the muffled noise of distant traffic. See some far-off businesses on the eastern reach of the property. Wonder how this vast expanse of dirt, broken equipment, shuttered buildings, and a large hole in the ground, a hole as deep as Sebago Lake, is even in the heart of the Westbrook-Portland area. You feel like you're in a different world. And it's incredibly close and in the heart of greater Portland. Not perfectly insulated, but pretty darn close. It's nearly perfect for any municipal use which would be allowed by municipal ordinance. The closest home over a half mile away, bounded on 4 sides by highways of at least 4 lanes, potential retail possibilities, office space, business services, housing, state-of-the-art parks, trails, green spaces never seen before in Maine, cutting-edge potential food and beverage services. And what about an entertainment venue? Could we put an entertainment venue in here? Would that help energize this site and this project that much faster for the benefit of the community and the future of Westbrook in Greater Portland? Like I said, nearly perfect in every way. The possibilities almost endless, but not without a lot of research, time, effort, collaboration with a lot of government, non-government organizations, and constructive engagement with the local community and citizens. So now we stand here today. I can truly say I have witnessed firsthand the incredible effort that Waterstone Properties Group, I thought it was close to 36 entities that they have engaged with. We were one of the first in Discover Downtown Westbrook in the summer of 2017. And we could have walked away from the table. Urban renewal isn't too far a distant memory. And we all know what happened to our downtowns when suburban sprawl and the malls popped up. The main mall did its number on Westbrook downtown and some other local communities right here. Pretty fresh in our minds. We didn't walk away from the table though. We engaged, we listened, provided feedback, and we were astounded by the willingness of Waterstone to listen to regular citizens and organizational groups. And from day one, they didn't say, this is our home now. This is your home, Westbrook. What do you want in your home? from day one, and they continue to say that to this day. In closing, I'd like to thank not only Waterstone Properties and Live Nation for bringing this exciting temporary and hopefully permanent, long-term, world-class entertainment venue to the nexus of the Forest City of Portland and the paper city of Westbrook, Maine. And I'd also like to thank the countless hours that the municipal staff, the public safety staff, the citizens of Westbrook, and all the planning and municipal groups that have, the hours that they have engaged in this project. You can see at the beginning of your planning board agenda, the number of meetings you, simply as the planning board, have engaged in this project since day one, even before Waterstone took over as developers. As Westbrook's representative on Visit Portland Board of Directors, we often lament that Maine really doesn't have that one big blueberries, some whoopie pies, a great coastline, but could this now be that one big thing that helps us even that much more in our tourism and marketing arm for the state of Maine and the region of Greater Portland? The possibilities are endless. So I'd like to thank each and every one. Since S.D. Warren took over a small paper mill in Westbrook, 1854, turned it into the largest, most successful mill in the world by 1885. I would say there is no more important project to the future of Westbrook than Rock Row and the concert venue within it. Thank you. Now I'd like to read a couple excerpts from...
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
Okay. So you mentioned a letter from Wally Camp. I'd just like to read a couple paragraphs from that with the chairman's permission. To the Westbrook Planning Board staff, it's our understanding that the developers of the former Blue Rock Pike Quarry, located across the street from our car dealership on Main Street, have brought forth the next phase of an overall site redevelopment master plan. As an abutting neighbor and business with a potential impact by the Rock Row project, we have been following the potential reuse of this site with keen interest. Since we moved to our current site on Westbrook's 150th birthday in 1964, we have continued to appreciate the city of Westbrook, partnerships within the community, and the willingness of municipal leadership to work towards a better future for both its residents and businesses. Row Ford has witnessed the abutting quarry site both in its heyday and recent dormant state. A unique attribute of the area for many years, the unique positioning of this site and the lack of residences within close proximity clearly lent to the success of its aggregate and blasting operations over the years. Despite the operational noise over the years, area businesses, including Row Ford, have continued to enjoy success in the area. Despite some potential concerns, it would appear that the potential of this redevelopment, including any concert and entertainment venue, is incredible for the future of the city of Westbrook, local economy, and surrounding region. We see incredible possibilities in the growth of surrounding businesses from the redevelopment of this site, especially as Portland continues to face growth challenges with an ever-decreasing stock of room to grow. The recent Exit 48 renovations and continued surrounding roadway improvements in anticipation of this redevelopment are clearly noticeable and working well. We are also intrigued by the possibility of over 3,000 jobs this may bring to the region and the increased tax revenue to Westbrook. The success of this project will have a direct economic effect on not only the surrounding businesses, but many local residents, of which many are current and potential future customers of Row Ford. Aesthetically, we couldn't be more excited that this former quarry area, which has evolved into somewhat of an unappealing eyesore, will become a much more vibrant and welcoming gateway to the Westbrook community. In summary, we at Row Ford have been proud of our history within Westbrook and have tried to do our part in promoting both our business and Westbrook home as well. We have invested heavily not only in our infrastructure, but the surrounding community as well, through numerous community partnerships and event sponsorships. We hear it day in and out. Westbrook is on the move. We firmly believe that despite its potential minor drawbacks and challenges, the potential for this redevelopment and the on-site entertainment venue helping maximize visibility and visitation for not only Rock Row, but the surrounding region, including Westbrook as well, holds incredible potential for the future of our community. Signed, Wally Camp Jr., President, Row Ford Sales. And I've got a letter from the president of our Westbrook Environmental Improvement Corporation. I'll make sure that gets into the file as well. That letter reads, "My name is Stephen Noyes, and I am a lifelong resident, board member of the Westbrook Environmental Improvement Corp. and its current president. I am here tonight to speak in support of Rock Row and the proposed music venue in particular. I am also a professional musician who has been on the road constantly for the last 30-plus years. I have played countless shows in so many different venues, it's hard to remember them all. I tell people that we have done our show in everything from a living room to a 20,000-seat arena and everything in between. To say that I'm a little excited about the possibility of a performance venue of this caliber in my hometown would be an understatement. I have personally witnessed what the introduction of these types of venues can do for a community over the years. In places such as Mansfield, Massachusetts, Guilford, New Hampshire, Hampton, New Hampshire, and most recently, Portland and Bangor, Maine. This could really do wonders in introducing potentially new residents and business owners to our amazing small city with a big future. See what I did there? All right, I didn't write this. Small city, big future, good. It's exciting to think of the countless numbers of people who could potentially refer to our city as a destination. That has never really happened. The magnitude of this development with the addition of the performance venue would really take our city into a new direction and literally put this magnificent project on the map. With a push to construct the music venue part of the development, I feel that its popularity would definitely accelerate the total build-out of the phases of the whole project. This is something I would really love to see as soon as possible. The numbers of people that a project like this could employ is really something to think about as you consider this. From the planning and construction phase to the operations of the actual facility itself, and to all the peripheral businesses and stores and restaurants and transportation companies that will benefit, could be substantial to the whole area. Also, the recognition of new tax revenue from this project could be a welcome relief to homeowners such as myself, who have just absorbed a big tax increase in the last round of budget negotiations. I think I read somewhere that the potential tax revenue with a complete build-out of this project is somewhere in the $5 to $6 million range, where the property on the tax rolls is now for around $95,000 a year. That would really make a difference. I do realize the concerns that some people have with the potential noise and traffic associated with this venue. It's been my experience that the traffic is always handled so well with these types of venues, as they have so much experience. They usually utilize multiple lanes in and reverse them after the show to facilitate easy traffic flow. I believe the 2 highway exits that flank this property will make it less congested than most of the other venues that I have attended or performed at. There is also a lot that they can do as far as the sound goes, the orientation of the stage, hours of operation, and quite frankly, those venues don't have concerts every day. I would assume at most a few shows per week in the summer months. I believe these are things we could deal with for the better good of our surrounding communities. Again, I'm very excited about the possibility of this venue and the project as a whole. I urge you as a resident, as a taxpayer, as a member of the Westbrook Environmental Improvement Corporation, and as a musician and a huge music fan as well, to please support this venue. Thank you. That's from Stephen Noyes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm John O'Hara from 80 Cottage Place, and in my 23 years of service to this fine community, there was a 5-year period where I was on 2 steering committees formed by 2 different mayoral administrations looking to place an amphitheater here in Westbrook. There were 2 sites that were chosen for proximity to our downtown area. One was the open field at the end of Foster Street, and the other was to be a parcel carved out at Riverbank Park. Upon further research by our legal team and Bill Baker, who was our economic development director at the time, Both of these parcels were deemed to be unusable because of the covenants that were associated with them when the Warren family turned these parcels over to the city of Westbrook to be used for purposes other than structures to be placed on them. Well, that was not what we really wanted to hear, but those were the facts. Fast forward to today, here we are discussing an amphitheater that, number one, is not going to require public funding as the other two would have, probably being put in a location that is the least impactive to this community, and third, just imagine what we have all been working for in this community to turn the page from where we were to where we want to be. And just imagine a conversation in your office or your place of work where you overhear one worker saying to another worker, "What did you do this weekend?" And the reply would be, "I went to Westbrook, saw a first-rate show, had a wonderful meal, and was home in 15 minutes. That is a destination city, and that is what we've been working for the past 2 decades. Give us an opportunity to do it, and we'll make it happen. I urge you to support this in its entirety. It's something that we've coveted for many, many years. I strongly urge you to support it. Thank you, members of the board."
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Swanson from 838 through 840 Main Street and owner of the Swanson Group, a CPA firm here in Westbrook. And the entire Waterstone project is very exciting, but this piece in particular I'm interested in because I think it will help our small business community, especially pulling some of the business outside of the project and into the other parts of the community and in the Main Street area. And for a lot of the small businesses that I work with, restaurants and retail, I think this will really help them. So I am in favor of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Dave Gutter. I do not
Spell
live in...
your last name, please.
Gutter?
Yes.
G-U-T-T-E-R.
Okay, thank you.
Usually good with microphones. I'm a musician, a professional musician touring, and a songwriter from Gorham, actually, for the last 20, 25 years. And Westbrook was always in my way to get to Portland from Gorham, because all the art and culture was in Portland or somewhere south of where I was from. So you're like 20 years too late, but I'm really glad that this is a prospect that Westbrook is doing, and I think it could be great for the local music scene and the local economy. So I hope this works out. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gutter. You already spoke once.
Can I speak again at public hearing?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. It actually helps because not only am I the Economic Development Director for the city, my name's Daniel Stevenson, but I'm also a resident here. I live at 70 King Street. So this evening, I'd like to speak as both a resident of the city of Westbrook as well as the Economic Development Director for the city. So thank you very much. I'll make 4 straightforward points about being support of the project that's before you this evening. The first is, it's been stated, I think, clearly already, and I realize the board recognizes that the overall impact of full build-out of the Rock Row site is a signature project for literally the state of Maine and New England, not just for the city of Westbrook, which would have significant positive economic impact in the community, in the surrounding communities. Number two, I wholeheartedly support the project before you tonight with the conditions as set forth by the staff earlier this evening. The amphitheater in the Live Nation name is an integral piece to the overall site development of this project. There's one reason why. And the reason for that is because if this project moves forward, and if you're willing to decide to move it forward tonight, it literally activates the site. And what happens is when it activates the site, it attracts and stimulates additional economic investment that will be directly tied to the site moving it forward, which is an additional investment to what's being made at this time. The overall economic development impact and the multiplier effect will literally be in the millions. I didn't bring a number tonight because I do not like to project it prior to it happening, but based off other venues in the state, I think it would be consistent with that. Number three, tourism and healthcare. They are our number 1 and 2 economic engines in the state. The city of Westbrook, in our plans that I reviewed prior to me taking the position here, one of the goals was to make Westbrook more destination-oriented. Our capture share of tourism right now is almost nothing. This is an opportunity for us to catch in excess of a $10 billion industry in the state of Maine, a lot more than we are now, which once again not only supports positive economic impact in the community, but it will certainly support our other businesses in the community as well, and literally drive people to the city of Westbrook. I assure you the development world is watching closely the progress that's happening at the site, including what's before you this evening. Number 4, and quite frankly, I think it's most important, something the council's heard from me already, which I'll share with you. Partnerships and trust are one of the most important things we can have, and I think especially when it comes to the development world. One of the things, when I first started working with Josh Levy, spoke early before in the Waterstone Group, is doing due diligence. Part of the due diligence is looking at who they are as a developer, how they operate in other communities, and do they do what they say they're going to do. Very rarely will you hear what I'm going to say to you tonight. In my 20 years of doing economic development in the state of Maine, I can tell you Josh Levy is the only investor that I've met who has the vision, who is genuine, and who cares. You don't see that very much in the development world. Waterstone will continue to be the fabric weaved as part of the fabric of this community. Everything that Waterstone has said with respect to negotiating the TIF that has gone through the council, as well as an overlay district, they have followed through with. I am lucky enough to have colleagues outside of the state of Maine, and one of them is in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I reached out to my colleague there, who is the economic development director there, of which Waterstone has investments there, who reassured me they do and say what they're going to do. They stick with the long game. And something that's very important to me is they keep everything in their portfolio. When they invest, they are here. And one of the things that Josh said to you that is important, that literally their name is on the line here. They're going to be before you many times in the coming years. And building trust early on is exceedingly important. So I end with, I appreciate you listening. I realize you have a large vote tonight. I support it. I encourage you to support it with the conditions as laid forth by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Shalosky, and my comments are based pretty much on the broadcast that was the replay of the second airing of the November 6th Planning Board meeting that aired this past weekend. I live at 20 Robin Avenue here in Westbrook. I'm here this evening to express my concerns regarding a potential threat to the peace and tranquility of my neighborhood due to the development of this open-air music venue to be located approximately 1/2 mile away at Rock Row. The Deer Hill area of Westbrook has always been a quiet and peaceful neighborhood with friendly neighbors and well-maintained homes. I'm concerned about the loud music emanating from Rock Row and disrupting the quality of life in my neighborhood. The developer is proposing a cutoff time for concerts of 10 p.m. or 10:30 p.m. on weekdays and 11:30 p.m. on weekends. Sunday night is part of the weekend, but it's also a work night. Would concerts be permitted to run until 11:30 on Sunday evenings? I have to arise early in the morning to get to work. I have neighbors who work shifts at SD Warren, Sappi, Maine Medical Center, Southern Maine Medical Center, as well as neighbors who arise early in the mornings in order to commute to employment in central and southern parts of the state. Sound has a tendency to carry very well at night. Football games at the high school, located 1 mile away, can be heard. Auto racing at Beach Ridge Speedway, located in Scarborough, can be heard. Are the surrounding neighborhoods going to be subjected to the concert's loud noises? I'm also concerned about the content of lyrics that may be blasted through our neighborhoods. During warm summer evenings, many people with their children and dogs will take walks throughout the neighborhood, and they might be subjected to the possibility of hearing vulgar lyrics or statements made by the performers on stage. Folks would not be able to enjoy their own backyards for barbecues or gardening throughout the entire summer, nor would they be able to open their doors and windows to allow fresh air and breezes to flow through. Do we have clarification of the time frame in which the developer is proposing to book concerts? What about band rehearsal times with loud squealing noises as instruments are tuned? Are concerts being proposed from Memorial Day through Labor Day? Is the developer proposing booking concerts in September? And tonight we heard that's true. Summer is listed on our calendars as lasting until September 21st, and there are certainly plenty of warm evenings in September. We have experienced early snow this year, and many school districts are proposing starting earlier than Labor Day to accumulate extra snow days if needed. In the past, some schools have commenced in late August, just prior to Labor Day. I'm concerned that parents of small children will the next day. The proposed parking for the theater is a 1,000-car lot located inside Rock Row and an overflow 700-car lot located along Larrabee Road outside of Rock Row. Parking for 1,700 is woefully inadequate for an 8,200-seat theater. If there are 4 individuals per car, that is parking for only 6,800 concert goers. Where are the remaining 1,400 concert goers to park? Will they be parking at Westbrook Crossing, namely Shaw's and Co's, and attempting to walk across 4 lanes of heavily traveled Brighton Avenue/Main Street to get to the concert? Will they be seeking further parking down Brighton Avenue/Main Street, such as in the surrounding neighborhoods and the parking lot at City Hall? If they park in surrounding neighborhoods, they may block driveways to homes, take up available space in front of homes where the homeowners may have already planned to have birthday parties or barbecues, and have their guests that have already been invited to park in front of their homes. Excuse me. If concert goers do park in these neighborhoods, there is the potential for them to be loud and rowdy at the end of the show, and loud and rowdy when they arrive back to their cars. There's also the potential for them to litter if they leave their trash and other debris on the lawns of these homes. Being unfamiliar with the area, there's also the potential for many concert goers to do property damage to occur if concert goers decide to drive on lawns in order to make a quick U-turn to exit back to Main Street. There are other outdoor venues in New England, including Meadowbrook, located outside of Lake Winnipesaukee, and Tanglewood, located in the Berkshire Mountains of western Massachusetts. Both of these outdoor theaters were well-designed and well-built. Both of these outdoor theaters are located away from popular areas and town attractions and activities. Meadowbrook is located in a wooded area with ample, well-organized parking and is located several miles away from the lake's beaches, restaurants, and hotels. Tanglewood is located in a wooded area in the Berkshire Mountains, and it too has ample, well-organized parking. Both of these outdoor theaters have roofs to help contain the sound, but also to protect the performers and the audience from inclement weather. With no roof being designed and built for the Rock Row Theater, I'm very concerned about thunderstorms that roll in the summer evening hours while a concert is being performed. Thunderstorms have been getting stronger in recent years, and water spouts and small funnels have occurred. With no roof overhead, I'm very concerned of the possibility of 8,000 people hurrying and running to get to shelter in safety. Heaven forbid that a thunderstorm be really strong and that there is a panic among 8,000 plus spectators. There would be the potential for individuals to sustain injuries and the possibility of death due to stampedes. I'm concerned this situation could pose a potential liability to the city. If these gentlemen, as they stated in their November 6th meeting, have no financing to provide a roof over the arena, and if we adopt, as they wanted at that time, a wait and learn as we go along plan that they proposed, who is to say they won't have adequate financing a year or so into this project and thus be unable to correct problems that arise? And please remember, this permit will be a permanent permit, not a temporary permit. I'm concerned that this outdoor theater would be incompatible with and have potential harm to the very development of Rock Row. Rock Row has been designed to include many shops, restaurants, and apartments. Perhaps some concert goers would patronize shops and restaurants prior to attending a show. But once the show starts, would anyone want to patronize a restaurant or shop that offers indoor and outdoor seating only to be blasted out by a concert being performed a few hundred yards away? This kind of dining experience would certainly not be appealing. The developers are proposing that the stage for this area face Brighton Avenue. This placement of the stage would severely affect not only the surrounding neighborhoods of Deer Hill and Berkeley Street areas, but also severely impact the elderly senior residents who reside at Westbrook Housing Authority's Liza Harmon Drive neighborhood, and also and even though it is located in Portland, just over the boundary line, the Barron Center, and the senior residents that reside next door at the Loring House, formerly City Hospital. The Barron Center is a nursing home, and many longtime Westbrook residents have chosen to reside there to remain close to families. The sad reality is that this is probably their final residence. A dear friend of mine passed away there recently, and I was told that the sense of hearing and the sense of sound is the last to go. I just cannot imagine someone on their deathbed being subjected to this loud music. I would like to think that Westbrook is more of a caring community than this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Randy Dufour. I'm a current employee at Waterfront Concerts. One of the first 3 people that started the company 9.5 years ago. So I've heard a lot of the concerns from residents like herself throughout the years. On the ground, answering phones for 9.5 years as Waterfront Concerts grew. We didn't start this because it was just something to do. We started it for the community in Bangor. I was a resident of Northern Maine, lived in Bangor, lived in Portland, South Portland. I've traveled, visited the whole state, and currently work for a company that, puts on concerts in Augusta, Lewiston, Bold Point in Rhode Island, and also Bangor. I just want to let you know that we have been thinking about the community the whole time as people have brought up things in Bangor. We adjusted the stage positions, we added fencing. Bangor itself had widened sidewalks since then. The first 3 years that we were there, we were a small group, 3, 4. We had people on the ground, maybe 50 people working per day at an event, and generated about $30 million over 3 years, roughly doing about 15 as an average for that time. Since then, this is going to be our 10th year in Bangor, and I'm looking to start something new here in Westbrook, and anxious to move forward with this project. And that's about it. I'm going to keep it brief because it is a long night, and I started my day in Presque Isle. So I thank you all for your time. And if you have any questions, again, this isn't the last meeting. So I just want to introduce myself.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Fuller.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Brenda Kelty. I live at 31 Devon Street in the Nason's Corner neighborhood of Portland. I submitted comments, and I think they were in your packet, so I just want to bring those to your attention. But I did get to attend a meeting with Rock Row and Waterfront's representatives and some of the community partners that came over to Nason's Corner, and it was an excellent presentation. Clearly, this is a really special opportunity, and it's all about the people, because they're bringing the energy, they're bringing the vision. It was really very impressive. But we actually didn't get a chance to really talk about the sound issues, because that was a work in progress, according to John, and their supplemental submission had not been submitted yet. So we saw that one graphic, but we didn't really get to sort of test out what does this mean for people who live in this neighborhood. So I would consider that an unfinished conversation that we really didn't get to fully vet. But I am naturally concerned about the noise. And I think despite the fact that I love the idea of the music, and I mean, I have Metallica on my lift mix, but I have Madame Butterfly too. So, I don't have anything about the music that I think is bad. If this was an enclosed amphitheater, I don't see that we'd have any problem. But it's not at this point. And there's a competing interest, and that is the quality of life for the people who are going to be impacted. And for me, I mean, and I hate to have to bring that, but I get up at 5, I commute to Augusta, I work every day. 2 of my neighbors are having babies this spring and this summer. I live in a very quiet, dead-end street kind of neighborhood that we don't even have cars go by after 9. Everybody's lights are out. This is a quiet neighborhood. So that really conflicts with what you want to do at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And if the noise was happening during the day, it wouldn't, we'd say, yeah, okay, it's a good balance. But people in my neighborhood are asleep at 9:30, and they're getting up early. And I've got a teacher who lives next door to me who leaves the house at 6:15 every morning. So you have to really consider that impact is real, and it makes this not perfect in every way. It's perfect in so many ways, but I think you have to be serious about protecting, and I'm on the Portland side of the line, but you have a lot of neighbors in Westbrook as well. So I just urge you to seriously consider that those impacts are very real. And despite, we want this to work, we want it to be awesome, and we know it can be, but please don't forget about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pelzer.
Good evening, Council. Bill Doherty, I'm actually from the town of Gorham.
I'm here more as a concert goer. My wife and I probably attend, I'm going to say 10 to 12 a year, maybe more. And we travel to Bangor, we've gone to Portland, we've gone to Mansfield, we've gone to Gillette, we've gone to New Jersey. We've traveled around. From the proposal I see tonight, this looks like a great venue for the concert goer. The traffic pattern looks like it can work to one of the best I've seen as far as coming and going. And yes, early in the evening, 5 o'clock when people are starting to come to a concert, it might be a little congested for people. Look at downtown Portland, I go through that every night, it's terrible. But I think in the long run, the economic value of this, we go down to a show, we go down early, we go to restaurants. I've gone to restaurants where shows are happening next door that I don't even get into and be sitting outside and I can listen to it and enjoy it. I mean, it depends on the music, depends on the person. But I think this has got a great setup. I think you guys should support it. It's going to help the whole economy, I think, of this area. And that's, I just wanted to come up and just give my point of view as a concert goer. I mean, I've been to concerts, Bangor and the waterfront, and they do an excellent job. I've never seen a problem with security. I actually work security at different venues, not theirs, but so I keep an eye out just for stuff like that, and they do a great job. So I think it's a good partnership that you have going here, so I think you should really consider it.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Kelly Molesky. I live at 44 Berkeley Street in Westbrook, and I want to thank the city for doing such a great job on their recommendations. I am also very concerned about the noise. I'm just thinking 10 o'clock at night. I don't understand about the decibels, but if there's equivalent of loud traffic going through my bedroom windows at 10 o'clock at night on a school night, it might be kind of hard to get my kid down to bed, or I'd imagine that. So I like the fact that they want to invest in our community. I think it's a great opportunity for them to come to our community. So I think that with the conditions that the planning board has set, that there shouldn't be any alterations to those as far as DBAs go. I think maybe next year you can revisit it. I think baby steps, instead of plunging in, getting a rash of complaints and not being able to fix it in time. I think it's easier to maybe take a baby step for this first year anyways, and see what happens next year. And I am really looking forward to attending some concerts in an indoor enclosed area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plosky. Public hearing's closed. I heard very few questions. One was, what's the time for the ending of the concerts?
Specifically, the question related to the Sunday nights. The Sunday would be considered, a weekday. So Sunday through Thursday was the 10 o'clock curfew. Friday and Saturday was the 11 o'clock curfew.
Okay. Where's my lawyer? Mr. Katsifikis.
Yes, sir.
There was a question about on booking. You choose who you want to answer the question.
Okay.
There was a question on booking. There was a question on rehearsals. We've all heard the parking question. And clarification as to, as I understood it, it was going to be something similar with a roof on it, but not a complete roof.
Right. To the structure itself, I mean, I probably shouldn't be answering structural questions. Okay. John Dow can answer, I think, all three of those questions.
Okay. If you would come up, please, Mr. Dow.
So starting with the structure, this is a stage line SL320. It's what we currently operate in the city of Portland. This is what I would consider our fallback, assuming this, well, hopefully if this is approved tonight, we may have enough time to come up with something slightly more substantial, but this is likely what you're going to see. There is a roof. It does protect the artist from rain. That is a condition of contract law with the artists. If it rains on their equipment, we own it. So that isn't an issue. Looking at, there were a number of questions there. I'm sorry, can you?
Yeah, question was booking.
Yeah, we're going to be booking artists. I mean, as soon as this is approved onward, it's any range of artists with Live Nation. We don't tend to skew to any one specific demographic. We try to represent pretty much everyone equally. So we'd be booking anything from comedy to classic rock to adult contemporary to hip hop. I mean, we've done it all. Disney Junior. I just did that one a few months ago.
Okay. How about rehearsals?
Rehearsals, I think you're talking about sound check. It would be my guess. That would be
That's the only thing they have is a sound check.
essentially there's a check to ensure that we're not breaking the sound limits. Every artist that comes in, plugs in their inputs differently, and they need to figure out what that level is so they can comply with it. Those typically, I mean, it can happen anywhere from noon to 3 p.m. Sound checks are roughly half an hour to an hour per band. It's not full level, but again, it's during the workday in the afternoon, and it would be a part of the concert day. Okay.
Thank
It's
you.
usually limited. Thank you.
Just one second. The clarification on the time frames in which that you will be booking concerts. So approximately at what point, like what month that you'll be starting concerts, and what month will you be ending concerts?
Oh, okay, yeah. That would mid to late May through mid to late September.
Thank you. With that, we've answered the questions, I think. Did you have any other more noted? Okay. Public hearing is closed. We will now move on. I will mention at this time, or it's 9:30, deliberation on agenda items, including workshops that have not been commented on by the planning board as of 10 p.m., may be rescheduled to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Now, that's a decision that the board will make when we get to 10 p.m., and I don't think there's any way we're going to avoid it. All right, call to order for the regular meeting, the approval of the minutes for May 15th and August 21st. Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the Westbrook Planning Board minutes for Tuesday, May 15th, 2018, at 7 p.m. Presented in this room as presented, and the Westbrook Planning Board minutes of Tuesday, August 21st, 2018, presented in a whole to us in 19 pages.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Ashewood. Everybody understands the motion? Everybody votes on this. The alternates are going to have to decide who votes when we get to the regular items, but you can vote on this one. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Now we're under new business, and the site plan for 380 Main Street, H&A Mapes Incorporated. The applicant is proposing to redevelop an existing gas station and office space to be a self-service gas station with convenience store. Tax map 40, lot 89, zone residential growth area 1, and village review overlay zone. We had our public hearing earlier. Look here, 1 second. We have a site walk on that one? No. That's the one we know what it looked like. Yeah. The item is now on the floor for discussion by the board. We already had one. for the public hearing up here. Huh? Question?
I have a question. Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Who am I talking to? Okay. I'm just not clear. Is this on? Okay, it's on. I'm not clear on what the planting is for the front strip right on Main Street. And I'm looking at this photo with the big light pole in the middle. And I see something indicated, but I don't see traditional planting that I'm reading. Can somebody clarify that for me? Is there planting there? What is the nature of it?
We're, excuse me, northern bayberry bush in the front strip and grass around it. It's a challenging area because of the snowbanks and salt from the road. So we tried to choose a salt-resistant species that's fairly hardy and will look decent after the ravages of winter.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. That's the
Yeah,
question.
I'm good.
All right, Dennis. Would you pull down your microphone? No, I'm sorry, man. Excuse me. That's right. Will you pull down your microphone?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I'm not done. I'm going to follow up on her question. Let's deal with the sidewalk. You'll be constructing a sidewalk completely around your property. So in other words, is it Lamb Street?
Correct.
Yes.
And on Main Street?
Correct.
Completely finished?
Correct.
Granite, everything painted, and all that?
I'd have to look at the existing curbs for those areas, but we would be matching existing, whether it's granite. I think the granite on the front is pretty beat down, so we'd be restoring that.
Awesome. And I see you only have one ADA parking. Is that normal for a site of this size?
For the parking and discussions with staff, I believe that's what we came up with. There's also, although it doesn't address ADA, we are allowed to use street parking for the employees and such.
On which street?
On Lamb Street.
Okay, good. Just wanted clarity.
Sure.
And your lighting. Okay. Are you going to have any lighting on the building?
I believe there's some wall packs were proposed. Do we still?
Yeah, you're showing them shielded.
Right, they're showing on, they're downward facing. See them here and here.
Okay. Are they wall mounts or are they going to be?
Wall mount, downward facing.
But lamps, not just light. To me, a wall mount is like a factory. Or are you going to have a light pointing to a wall or a sign or a walkway?
They're designed to provide lighting in the area for safe, walking, et cetera.
Good. And you said fence. Are you going to have the trees and the bushes plus the fence? Or did I misunderstand you when you mentioned the wooden fence?
They're on opposite sides of the property, so the trees and the bushes are along Lamb Street, and the bushes are on Main Street. The fence is between the property and the residences on the other sides.
I'm happy. Thank you.
One more?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I want to say I appreciate what you're doing on Lamb Street, and I thought the letter from the neighbor was very interesting and thoughtful. And to some of her points, question one, maybe this is obvious right here, what are your operating hours? And question two, You said no plans at this point to have like the TV that runs while you're pumping your gas, but do you, would, and this is a question to Jenny, would you have the ability to add that later? Would that have to go through any sort of process with your office for review? Having just experienced one of those, I was like, who's talking to me? Yeah.
The installation of those would not need any additional permitting per se. If the board wanted to strongly state on the record that their statement that it's not going to be installed now means that it would not be installed ever, the board could just clarify that for the record so that it would be in the minutes.
Do you think it's in future plans?
There's nothing planned.
It's-
We're just trying not to limit future operations. The intent of the development is more of a neighborhood store, where most of the purchases are going to be regular customers who are commuting to and from Portland and live in the neighborhood. So to the extent we're doing things that harm the neighborhood, it doesn't help the business. H.A. Mapes is a long-standing family-owned business in Sanford, and they are trying to expand their presence in the Portland area with family-oriented convenience stores. So they are, so it's in their best interest to keep neighbors such as Kelly happy, and there's a limited effect to those video sales and music devices. So their primary intent was to upgrade the facility, make it very welcoming, offer the products that the neighbors want, and that will bring people in. I also welcome, any concert goers who want to buy gas on the way.
Well played.
We'll try and keep the music down for them.
And hours of operation?
Hours of operation are typically 6 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Oh, so it goes all the way to 11.
Right.
I don't know what the formal thing is. I'd like to at least go on the record saying that I would, strongly hope that there not be a noise component, an oral,
Sure.
thing. But I don't feel I need to bring the whole planning board into it. But I think, we've given a fair representation for the record.
And certainly just having worked with other facilities like drive-through speakers and such, typically they imagine that
You could call this guy who's gone, but.
right, that anything we propose would still have to meet those levels.
Okay.
It's a very small site, the property boundary is very close by, but we're not talking about the types of speakers they're proposing for the concert venue.
I get that. Okay, thank you.
Are we good? I don't know. You all set down there? Yep, we're good.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Please do.
I'd like to make a motion, the site plan application for H.A. Mapes Incorporated to redevelop an existing gas station and office space to be a self-service gas station with convenience store located at 380 Main Street, tax map 040, lot 089, zone residential growth area 1 and village review overlay zone, is to be approved with conditions and the following finding of fact, conclusions, and conditions as stated on pages 2 through 4 of the staff memo dated November 30th, 2018, are adopted in support of that approval. Condition 1. Approval is dependent upon and limited to the proposals and plans contained in the application dated November 7th, 2018, and supporting documents and oral representations submitted and affirmed by the applicant, and conditions, if any, imposed by the planning board. And any variation from such plans, proposals, and supporting documents and representations are subject to review and approval by the city planner or the planning board.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm looking at my two alternatives.
Should do this one.
You're going to vote on this one? Okay. The motion is on the table. All those in favor? Opposed? It is unanimous in favor. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for coming to Westbrook.
Next item on the agenda is subdivision. Meadowbrook subdivision, DWN, asset management. The applicant is proposing a 7-lot, single-family cluster subdivision with 2 private ways and approximately 34 acres of open space lot along Duck Pond Road, tax map 21, lot 57. The zone is residential growth area 3. Questions of the, now that we're to the board, do you have any questions?
I have a question. One thing that wasn't mentioned today was the cemetery and how that is going to be addressed.
Yep, the cemetery is located near the brook, and it actually falls within the brook setback, so there's no disturbance in that area. But additionally, we've added a 25-foot setback around that cemetery. In discussions with the city, that's the setback that's required, and we're not, we don't have a lot line in that, so that's all within the open space, so it'll just be preserved in its natural state.
Okay, now, it was mentioned during the site walk that that was going to be kind of cleaned up. Someone mentioned that, I heard, that cemetery. Now, was that the city's doing to clean that up, or whose is it? I thought the owner was going to clean that up a bit or something. I thought I heard that. Did I?
We have another project that we cleaned up on Duck Pond Road.
I gotta ask you to come to the mic, please.
Good evening, I'm Wayne Nelson, DWN Asset Management. To my recollection, we talked about the cemetery and talked about that it was not going to be on any lot, it was in the open space. Now, we do have a project that was not reviewed by Planning Board, which was in the Westbrook American, about the easement granted and the cemetery cleaned up down the road. But I don't think this cemetery, to my knowledge, is overgrown, nor has anybody come forward and asked for us to do anything. Now, if there's something different, I certainly will listen. I don't have any recollection.
Okay. I thought it was brought up, and I thought something was going to be done. I don't know if anyone else was on that site walk that can remember that being brought up. I do.
I believe during the site walk, there was a discussion, there was a member of the public who came in informally and spoke to planning staff and had mentioned that there was a cemetery on here. That individual may have been involved in the cleaning up of the cemetery that you're referring to, and was interested in knowing if the cemetery would be preserved for a possibility of cleaning up later, but there was not a formal request made that it be accessible or have any work done to it at this time.
Okay, but that will be accessible to the city. I do believe it's the city's responsibility to keep up its cemeteries, even private cemeteries. I'm not sure, but that will be.
Yeah, it will be accessible because of the open space access.
Okay.
And there is, by state law, a 25-foot easement around it, and also granted rights to any heirs or descendants of anyone buried in that cemetery.
Well,
by
that's a
state
very
statute.
old cemetery.
Yep, by state statute, it's protected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Don't sit down, Wayne. All right. You know I was here.
Yeah, you and I actually walked on the site walk, and because you took over for Ed.
Thank you. Sidewalk. Any?
No, sir.
Okay.
None required with a private way. none on Duck Pond Road.
Right. The pond, do you have
Yes.
any idea how deep it is?
I do not. My understanding is that it was created in either the late 50s or early 60s at the bequest of the Public Works Department of the City of Westbrook for either an overflow protection for Minnow Brook, but as you may remember, it caused a great deal of stress for Mrs. Hawks in the creation that it slowed the flow downstream through her property. But I don't know the depth of it. Frankly, in the dead of summer, Minnow Brook is dry on both sides of it. So it may be a few feet, 6 or 7 feet, but I don't have a depth of it and you can't see the pond until all the foliage is gone. You clearly can see it now, but through the summer months, you can't even tell it's out there.
Okay. I was just wondering if there would be something that'd be worthwhile for the neighborhood to go skating on.
Well, yeah, well, that's the whole concept of the open space with the recreation. They're going to build a trail system with the hopes of connecting that trail system to the future behind us. And if that happens, the entire open space combined will connect to the Falmouth line, which connects to their trail system.
Okay.
So it has great potential.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe?
I had a question on the access and the open space. The parking lot I see there off Duck Pond. Is the thought from the land trust to eventually put a crossing over Meadowbrook to access?
Yes,
the other
they will have to build a crossing trail, and there's a fairly well-defined clearing to the left of the pond as you're facing the parcel. The pond is almost straight in where the parking area is. And to the left of that, there's a defined clearing. There's a very narrow crossing area which could accommodate a footbridge fairly easily. It's only about 7 or 8 feet wide, most of the brook, well-defined bankings. So it would be fairly easy to cross with a permit from the DEP. And I did touch upon that early on with the DEP, what their thoughts were. And they said as long as it was applied for, it should be a simple matter to permit it.
All right, thank you.
Do you have any comments? No? John?
No, except to Jenny. I did notice that there was a comment from staff about the, bear with me, comment 8, including the silt fence lines. Does the condition that we put in at 3H, does that just cover that, to make sure that that's done?
So that was something that was discussed with the applicant, and the applicant did address that on the final set of plans by expanding the erosion sediment control line.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The staff comments have been modified, and the numbers are all dropped one line. They put in a new one, and you have it on your desk. It basically says that all homes must be constructed at least 1 foot above floodplain elevation, reference draft 2017 preliminary firm map. So that's one. Did you add that to the conditions, or?
Within the conditions, we have a statement that all staff comments must be addressed, so that falls underneath the staff comments.
Okay, you've got a copy of it. Okay. Yes, thank you. There's a motion on page 6, if there are no more comments.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the subdivision plan application for DWN Asset Management for a 7-lot subdivision, 2 private drives, and a 33.86-acre open space lot with associated public parking located along Duck Pond Road, tax map 021, lot 057, zone residential growth area 3, is approved with conditions and the following findings of fact, conclusions, and amended conditions as stated on pages 6 through 8 of the staff memo dated November 30th, 2018, are adopted in support of that approval. Condition 1. Approval is dependent upon and limited to the proposals and plans contained in the application dated November 7, 2018, and supporting documents and oral representations submitted and affirmed by the applicant, and conditions, if any, imposed by the planning board, and any variations from such plans, proposals, and supporting documents and representations are subject to review and approval by the city planner or the planning board.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Joe seconded. Okay. Joe? Any more questions or comments from the board? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? It's unanimous in favor. Thank you. You're welcome. Uh-oh. Okay. Item number 8 on our agenda. Amended site plan and conditional use, Rock Row, previously called Dorigo Plaza, 58 and 80 Main Street, Waterstone Properties Group, Jones and Beach, on behalf of Waterstone Properties Group, is proposing an amendment to the previously approved site plan for a 495,915 square foot regional retail shopping center. The amendment is proposed for a 8,000 plus or minus seat amphitheater located, associated parking, on campus. This is tax map 42, lots 9, 10, 11, 14. And the zone is gateway commercial.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
My firm represents a party who has an interest in a prior approval involving Rock Row, so I just want to recuse myself from any deliberation or decision.
Thank you very much. That means you're voting and you're voting. So, the planning board has 7 members. When 7 members don't show up, we have 2 alternates. They are allowed to vote on anything, but their votes don't count unless the permanent member is there. That's rather crude, I'm sorry.
We'll forgive you this time.
But they can comment on anything and participate in anything. With that, we are now to Rock Row. We've had our public hearing, and
We need a doctor.
more than a doctor. You all right? Almost, huh? Okay.
Mr. Chair? Oh, are you?
Yeah, no, I'm going on to page 13 of the memo, where there are 2 motions, two waivers requested. And we've had discussions on the parking standards. Can I have a motion to approve the waiver or to deny the waiver?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve, to waive the requirements of Section 505, Site Plan Review Design and Performance Standards, off-street parking standards for the theater use from 2,460 to 1,721.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin seconded. Thank you. Everybody understands the motion? All those in? Any comments, anything? All those in favor? 5 in favor, 2 opposed, Mr. Daniel and Mr. Isherwood. Want to do the honors on the second one, Kim?
Sure. Mr. Chair, I'd like to motion to waive the requirements of Section 505 Site Plan Review Design and Performance Standards, Utility and Road Standards to allow for overhead power service for the amphitheater use.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I have a question. Can I pose a question?
No, after I get a second to the motion, that's all.
You have a second.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now,
Okay. And this is temporary, correct? Just for the amphitheater? Just
Right.
for how?
correct.
Okay.
They have stated, and that's why we repeat the thing at the other end of the, read Condition 1. Condition 1 says anything you've said or done or presented to us, you will do. And they have presented to us that it was temporary, several times. Oop. She did? What's she want to do? She's not looking at us.
I just wanted to reiterate on this particular point that, to just make sure that the board felt comfortable with the waiver condition, we did include in the conditions of approval that, that the lighting for this was going to just be for the amphitheater, and that anything further on the site that is developed would require underground power, and therefore all of the poles and the overhead lines would have to be removed. So I just wanted to make sure that the board members felt perfectly clear on what the expectations were.
Thank you. We've been told that before. Would anybody care to make a motion on the waiver?
I made a motion.
You made
It was
the motion.
seconded.
It was seconded?
Yep.
I get lost sometimes.
A lot of motions.
Everybody understands the motion? It's to waive the power. All those in favor? 5 in favor, 2 opposed, Mr. Daniel and Mr. Isherwood. Now we come to the main motion, which is printed for us, and
Page 17, it's not highlighted.
beg your pardon?
Page 17, it's not highlighted. Very top, first condition.
Oh, shoot, we didn't highlight
Yeah, why I'm hesitating, these are the conditions, and some more,
And some more.
so,
There's just a few pages.
yeah. And where we normally only read the first condition, and I don't expect us to do anything more than read the first condition. The first condition says, if you said it, you'll do it. If you presented it, you'll do it. So, with that, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board approve the Rigel Center Developers LLC's application for the amendment to the previously approved final site plan and conditional use approvals granted by the planning board on October 18th, 2016, and all subsequent amendments thereafter for property located at 58 and 80 Main Street, tax map 42B, lots 9, 10, 11, and 14, zone Gateway Commercial, including, without limitation, approval of the amended phased commencement and completion schedule attached to the application, and the following findings of fact, conclusion, and condition as stated on page 13 through 21 of the staff memo dated November 30th, 2018, which are adopted in support of that approval. Conditions. Approval is dependent upon and limited to the proposals and plans contained in the application dated September 13, 2016, and amended September 6, 2018, and all supporting subsequent documentation and oral representation submitted and affirmed by the applicant, and conditions, if any, imposed by the planning board, and any variation from such plans, proposals, supporting documents, and representations are subject to review and approval by the city planner or the planning board.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
No, oh yeah, I'm sorry. You excuse me, Dennis. Yeah, you read the first condition, please.
I did.
You did. And we're all set then. Dennis seconded. Dennis. Everybody understands the motion?
Are we going to have any discussion?
On the motion?
Yes.
If you'd
If
like
you'd
some?
like.
If you'd like it. Go ahead.
All right. Jenny, to you. I'm trying to follow all the input is separate. I'm trying to follow what is contained in this, what the applicant is asking for, which I get is slightly different, but is not written here.
Correct.
So therefore, unless one of us says we want it, it's not here. And I guess just want, because I feel like we've had such a vigorous public input, and our last meeting was more concerned to see if any of my fellow members had comments, because I feel like we're moving towards this being approved, and it's a good thing, but I want to somehow respect all the opinions that are being given. And a lot of that, to me, has to do with the 5-year nature of this. So let me be specific. One is, can you remind me what the conditions are that the applicant wants that aren't in here?
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to recommend them, but I just want to know. And two, this thing where in some letter it said they were willing to put a 5-year condition on, is that written in here, or was that simply an offer and that hasn't been taken yet?
That is not in there. We don't typically put a sunset clause on our approvals. The applicant can, after 5 years, decide that they no longer wish to continue with the permit. Or they may decide that they wish to. If the applicant felt really strongly about that after the end of 5 years that this permit was going to expire, I suppose the board could require that as an additional condition upon all of these items as well. We typically do not put sunset clauses on permits, but if the board wishes to do so, they could add that as a condition.
So remind me, and I'm the one who asked the question last time, but I think it illuminated stuff for other people. This permit for the temporary facility is indefinite. They
Correct.
could leave it up for 10 years. I get that they wouldn't, because it's not in their interest, but they could.
They could.
We have no recourse at year 6 to say, get out, stop.
Based upon how it is currently written, no.
Okay. That's their timing, their proof of concept, hopefully earlier. Okay, and can you clarify for me the 2 pieces that were requested by them that aren't currently in here? Because it was something about the number of days, but I thought that was the number of days we had.
So
16.
So under condition number 7, which says conditions specific to the amphitheater project, there is a statement B, Roman numeral 2, quantity of events per week, no more than 2 events in any 7-day span. The applicant is asking after the first year that go up to 3 events per year. I'm sorry, per week. Sorry, it's been a long night. Number 3, underneath that comment, it states this permit will allow for up to 16 events per year. The applicant is asking that state 16 events in the first year, but then to go up to a maximum of 30 after the first year.
Would that require them to come back to us for that?
Yes.
And then the last one has to do with the decibel.
Because Becca made a good point. If you amended the condition to put that in there, then they would not have to come back. If you do not put that into the condition and they wish to have more than 16 events, then they would have to come back.
Thank you. And the last one is about decibel levels.
Yes. So number 5 in that same series, it states noise limits set at neighborhoods of either 55 dBA or 5 dBA above ambient. The applicant is asking for 10 dBA above above ambient rather.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Would you care to modify the motion?
No.
Thank you.
I have a question. So what we heard from the police chief was a lot of concern about having the proper staffing to be able to manage the number of events that are being requested. So how do we work with that? How does that fit into this process to make sure that they get what they need, or somehow that piece will be met so that it can be successful for the city and for the people coming in?
It seems like the chief addressed the concerns, and I assume you're happy with what's on the book right now of 16 events.
Yes, the message that I'm trying to relay is I think 16 events are doable for the first year. At the same time, I don't have confirmation from my peers in the greater Westbrook Police Departments as to how much staff they may have available to us. So it's, I've got 6 months to work through that with the anticipation that there'll be some level of cooperation. But I can't guarantee or promise that as I sit here tonight.
It's an ongoing problem.
It's an ongoing discussion that really hasn't started yet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So is that anything that factors into a condition we would put?
No, usually the board does not get into departmental policies. And that's what the chief is saying to you, that if you want to increase your taxes and give her 10 more people, she'd be a lot happier. But
You'd all be a lot happier, actually, but your taxes would go up.
yeah, so it's a balancing act on everything, even though the developer will pay for the police present.
Being realistic, the fact is that our partners that are looking to bring the events to our city cannot wait until I figure out, do I have these partnerships and agreements with other local police departments to book their events. It's basically, you got to go with, I expect it'll happen, and we'll find some way to work it out. It might be a strain on us for the first year, but we will figure it out as we go along and make sure that we have public safety taken care of during the event.
Well,
Thank you.
that's it. Motion is on the floor to approve. All those in favor? You get to vote.
I do?
Yeah. The gentleman beside you abstained. It is unanimous in favor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We do have other business. If you want to have your conversations out in the hallway, that would be most appreciated. Thank you.
It's not over yet, people. Thank you.
One second.
Right here, yes.
John, tell Rocky I said hey.
I will. See you later.
What's your pleasure right now?
Would you be willing to entertain a few of these items to talk about, or am I taxing too much?
It's up to the board. We're beyond 10 o'clock, and it says,
When is our next meeting? I mean,
I'm sorry?
What I would need to, when is our next meeting?
The next meeting would be January 15th.
Be a good time for it.
And how urgently do you need these before then?
this is that blood, sweat, and tears.
That's it?
Yeah. They're all basically
They'll be in the same.
corrections or additions in order to clean up the ordinance, in order for them to do their jobs easier, not easier. And
The intent of a lot of this is that we, over the course of the last few years, have been keeping a tally of all the items in the ordinance that we're just like, okay, we need to fix this, we need to fix that. We've also got a number of uses in various zones that need to be adjusted. And once you adjust a use within a zone, you have to notice everybody in the zone that you are making one adjustment. So if we're going to make an adjustment, then we want to make it worth our while that we're sending notices out to everybody in that district. So we're packaging a lot of items, not a lot, but several items together to make the most of these moments. A lot of them are very much administrative in nature. The Business Professional Office District, real quickly, is literally we're scratching every statement within the ordinance that refers to Business Professional Office District, because we eliminated the zone from our city zoning map. So there is really no changes outside of the fact that we are cleaning the ordinance up to take all of the wording that refers to that particular zoning district. So that is that's the first one.
Yep. Yes, Ernie.
The last time I made this motion, I regretted it for about 2 years. Here it goes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move, if the city planner can be articulate and brief and keep us moving, we could accomplish this rapidly, and we wouldn't have to spend more than 20 minutes here.
Will do.
Does anybody have any objection to that?
Chair, I'm going to respectfully remove myself. I have a child that's been sitting in the hall this whole time, so since she had practice, so.
You having changed or something?
Yeah, she had practice, so she had to wait. So I'm going to, since we already have a quorum without me, I'm going to go ahead and leave it this time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your service. Anybody else have any objections or have a need to leave?
Mr. Chair, I move that we go into workshop.
Could I have a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor going to workshop? Anybody opposed? Okay. Let's go.
Okay. So I just explained to you the Business Professional Office District as far as it's just literally eradicating the language from our ordinance. Does anybody have any questions related to that particular piece?
No.
Nope.
Second one is village review.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry, I'm going too quick.
Go to public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Does anybody, any objection to these all going to public hearing once we get through them?
None at all.
Well, actually, I would like to have a little time, partially I need to digest the village review overlay zone. I don't know if we could pull that one out. That one to me has more teeth, it has more nuance than the others.
Yep.
I don't know.
We still got to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you, Chief.
thank you.
Take care, JT.
Well,
Thank you.
sure, as long as I can participate in the public hearing.
If you recluse yourself,
Yeah.
you can either participate from the seat you sit in, or you can recluse yourself and go and speak from the podium.
Okay, if it's going to, fine, then if it's just going to public hearing, fine.
That's all.
And the board could make a decision at public hearing that they wish to continue it. You
Right.
could continue the public hearing, you could close the public hearing, and then take action at a subsequent meeting thereafter.
Okay.
So it's entirely up to you
If
to make
there is a
that.
substantial change in the verbiage that is presented to the board, then you either have to hold a second public hearing or determine that it wasn't substantial.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. We get down to rid of the district document. Now we're going to talk about village review, which is, we're sort of putting on hold until the public hearing.
Until the public hearing, the language within this basically is trying to codify the Village Review Overlay Zone Committee, which currently doesn't have language within the ordinance that reflects the committee at all. So we need to incorporate their committee within the Village Review zoning regulations to make sure that they have a step in the process. We have been including them within the steps, but we want to formalize them in process. So that's where you will see that we have added their name within the document, and where that they fall within the ranks of the various processes, whether it's an internal process or whether it's a planning board process. And was that the only thing in village?
You're also giving them all of the demolitions.
Yes, yes, that was the biggest component, and and the reason that we wanted to go in that direction initially is that what we were getting for requests was garages, sheds, things that were clearly not historic in nature, and truly the purpose of why that we would want to delay a demo permit. So what we thought was the better course of action is put the demo permits to the Village Review Committee for them to do an initial review and not necessarily take the time of the planning board to have to review that we're going to demo a garage. So if they find that there's no historic thank you, to that particular structure, that they could handle it and sign off on that being demoed. If they found any sort of concern, it gets kicked up to the planning board, and the planning board would then go through the process. So it was more trying to utilize the time of the board judiciously, but also incorporate the committee in a useful way. So yes, no, you're right. That was the most substantive change within that section.
Public hearing. Okay. Next one is the sign ordinance.
There has been some inconsistencies between policies on regulation of signs, as well as, I think, intent of how we want to try to regulate signage specifically in the city center district. The first thing within that sign section you'll see is that there was a change of the verbiage from permitted by exception to conditional use, because we no longer use the term permitted by exception anywhere in our document. So that is an administrative component. When you get into the city center district standards, there has been some confusion over visually distracting signage, which we have a statement under number 4. So we just clearly are stating that devices that represent a visual distraction to the motoring public are clearly what we're trying to avoid, especially in our downtown district where we have so much pedestrian movement, that we want people to be focused on the road and not at waiting signs on the sides of the road. So we wanted to clarify that piece. Additionally, in the city center district, we felt that if we're trying to bring signs into conformance, we should afford similar step-down provisions that we allow in a residential district. So our application tonight for 380 Main Street, the gas station, previously the Holly's sign that's out there, they want to redo the sign. They have to bring the sign 25% down. They don't have to completely conform with the residential zoning sign regulations, but they reduce the sign 25% to get it closer to conforming, but they don't lose the entire sign. We don't have that provision in the city center district. We felt that it was important to sort of be a middle ground solution between somebody completely losing their sign and sort of doing a step-down approach. Since we already use it in a residential district, why couldn't we use it in the city center district? There was also some just clarifications on numbers of signs allowed under 404.313, just to clarify that we allow for one sign on each building face. And then we wanted a provision in there regarding open flag signs. Since an open flag is technically signage for a business, we want our businesses to have the ability to have an open flag sign out. We've put in a statement that that is a permitted signage and put in parameters as to what that open flag sign can be. There was also some clarifications on community event signs that we needed to clarify between different sections of the ordinance, because we have the city public director of public services that also reviews and issues permits on community event signs. And on awnings, we have been waiving the standards for awnings to say you can be either canvas or we've been allowing metal. To avoid the board having to grant waivers on these items, we felt that metal or canvas should be an allowable material in the city center district so that you don't have to grant waivers on those each and every time. I think from a historical standpoint, it doesn't seem like that is in any way a detraction from what we're trying to achieve. At the very end of the document, we're just trying to clean up some of our non-conformance language so that we afford ourselves the waiver provisions within the city center district language, and so that we're not conflicting. That is signs.
I find the term repair in sub J to be a little mischievous. Why is repair? And I understand that relocation, alteration, yep. Repair?
Yeah. I approve the repair.
If you have a backlit sign and somebody damages the face of it, then you've got to have to go in and repair it.
Right.
Yeah.
But under this, unless it's a panel, you'd have to reduce it if it's non-conforming. So if we get something like, I think it's Dairy Queen, I think their sign is non-conforming. If something happens to that sign and they just want to repair it, they're not going to have to reduce it, right?
Yes.
That's another waiver.
Well, they would be reducing it down by 25% of what they currently have, getting it closer to conforming. And we're trying to play a middle ground. There had been a policy previously that on backlit panels that you see throughout the downtown area, that a true swap out of a panel to change a business name wasn't considered a true alteration. And so the signs were never required to be shrunk. But in the previous language, it stated wording, that if you changed wording, you lost your sign entirely. But that practice had never really been implemented. So we were looking at this as sort of like a middle ground. We don't necessarily think that wording was what we were trying to really achieve, but if somebody has to, if somebody backs over a sign.
Someone backed into the pylon, bent it.
That's right.
And he wanted to replace the footing and the I-beam because he needed to. And while the sign was down, he wanted it repainted to bring it, because it faded from the UV. That was basically a repair.
That was a repair, but it was not required to be brought down.
So even so, like he said, the Dairy Queen, even so they came before this board, what, a year or two ago, 3 years ago? To have that sign done, because they're in an area where the sign wasn't allowed. So even though they have that okay to have that size sign, if they if something happens to it, they would have to go down 25%?
They're not in the city center. They're not in the city center district. They're in a they're in the RJ1 because they're in a residential district.
So they wouldn't?
So this provision does not affect Dairy Queen per se.
Ah, okay.
But their provision already exists
But it
within.
does anyone else? Okay.
It would affect anybody within the city center district strip. So from just. Yeah, so just shy of Holly's, because Holly's is RGA1, and then continue that all the way up through Main Street all the way to Gorham is our city center district zone. So you can think about it, and if you think that that term should be altered, that can be something that can be redressed. If we have it in here and you take it out, that's not an issue at a public hearing. It's if we had to add language or adding something new, then that might trigger requiring an additional public hearing.
Right. I'm just thinking about some property owner who, no fault of their own, something happens to the sign. It's non-conforming just because they've had it forever, and now we tell them, or someone's going to tell them, or potentially tell them that they've got to reduce the sign, that it's already non-conforming. I just
Too, that, this could prohibit people from rehabbing their signs if it's worn and needs to be repainted. Would that classify as a repair? I think we want to invite people to rehab their signs, to the extent practical.
Next.
Yep. With the influx of new types of uses such as small breweries and tasting rooms, we had been trying to look at a definition to bring into our ordinance. Currently, a tasting room would fall underneath the term manufacturing with an accessory use of a tasting room. We want to be able to call these types of uses what they truly are. And this particular definition has been utilized in other communities where it's not just specific to beverages, but also to foods. So if you were a small batch candy or a cheesemaker, you could manufacture on your premise and sell to the public there as well. And these are evolving types of uses that we wanted to try to include in our business districts. We've put forth a few general provisions, performance standards that would be specific to artisan food and beverage. And the 3 zones that we are looking to incorporate this into would be City Center District, Gateway Commercial, and Industrial Park Districts.
If you people remember when the chocolate factory, which is down by the pizza place, came to town, they kept that, not just the breweries.
I know we think Rock Row is a big idea, but when you have artisan in your zoning ordinance, you've really arrived.
That's what we felt.
Gentrifying.
Anybody have any problems with that? Thanks. Next.
All right, so we have veterinary office and kennel. Currently in our ordinance, we have 2 terms that we utilize within our use categories in various zones. We have the term veterinary clinic that is defined within our ordinance, and we have a use stated veterinary office or kennel that is not defined currently in our ordinance, but is listed in our land use tables in various zones. So what we were also looking at is there really shouldn't be a statement of veterinary office or kennel, is that those 2 distinct uses should be uses to themselves. And so therefore, this language is adding a definition for a boarding kennel and performance standards for a boarding kennel that Becca did research on various communities to try to pull together standards that we felt would be pertinent to the kennels and safety and cleanliness. So what that does to the zoning districts is that where we had previously the statement of veterinary office or kennel, is the term veterinary office is just going to the term veterinary clinic. which is already defined. And then the use of kennels is being stated as boarding kennels. And those already exist in our Highway Services District, our Gateway Commercial District, and those are the two. So those two districts already have those uses in there, but we're just sort of breaking the two apart and making them distinct uses.
Any questions or comments?
Makes sense.
Seeing none.
Doggy daycare is a good business nowadays.
Next one is the Gateway Commercial District, discussion of amending it.
Since we are touching the Gateway Commercial District for other uses at this time, we are looking at some compatible uses that we feel would help with the vibrancy of our Gateway Commercial area. This is the zoning district language out of the ordinance. Within it, we're looking at adding adult daycare, business office 2, convention center, library, museum, parking facilities, and research and development. And all of those.
All those are defined already within the ordinance?
Those are already defined.
I wish you would organize the first part of the meeting as good as this one.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
Our last one, see, 20 minutes, is our bulk administrative changes throughout the ordinance. Between chapters 2, 3, and 5, which are our definitions and performance standards, we have incorporated definitions. Actually, Chair, I misspoke on the convention center. I'm sorry, in the Gateway Commercial District, Convention Center was a newly defined use. So that one was an add. We added in definitions where we needed them. We've made slight adjustments to definitions such as frontage. Frontage has been something that we've been struggling with as a definition because we have another term in here called lot width. And it causes confusion and frustration for not only the applicants, but it causes frustration for us in how to interpret what is truly frontage. So what we are clarifying with frontage is that it is the straight line distance between the intersections of the side lot lines with the right-of-way. So it's very clear where your side lot lines come in for your lot, straight line distance, that's your frontage. And the term lot width is being eliminated in its entirety throughout the ordinance because it was duplicative of the term frontage, and it was only in a couple of districts. So we want to, again, just try to make things cleaner and clearer so that piece is being adjusted in this document. The term hotel motel, we are just eliminating the term motel because there is no differentiation between the two in our ordinance. We're just calling everything that falls underneath this definition a hotel. Manufacturing, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, if we're going alphabetical, I want to make a comment about height of structure, because I interact with this one a lot. Some municipalities say within 20 feet. At least I just remember Falmouth does, because it's like, okay, average grade, where? There are a lot of ways to play the game. I don't know how big a deal it is in Westbrook, but I've dealt with that in other municipalities, that it's within a certain feet from the building.
From the edge of the building.
Correct.
There's a definition in the building code, and this pretty much mirrors that.
Okay. I mean, frankly, it gives people more leeway.
It does. Yeah, IRC and IBC give the same definition.
Same thing. Okay.
Hey, Jenny?
Yes.
While we're on the definition section, the convention center, the last section that says convention center, oh, actually, no, the last part of the first sentence is as its principal use. If you're doing a hotel and conference center, what are you going to consider? I guess they're both permitted, but I guess does it matter? How would you determine which one is principal use?
I would think it would be the hotel, yeah.
I would too.
Yeah, and that the that as an accessory use to the hotel, they have a convention center or conference rooms. But the primary use of the structure, I think we would end up terming it as the hotel.
But there are no specific standards for conference center.
Nope.
So it doesn't really matter because they're both permanent uses, so. And then the other question I had was about the lot frontage. So if you're on a curved roadway, then, I play this game too, is you don't get credit for the arc length, you only get credit for the straight line distance.
Correct.
Oh, no.
So how does that compare with other
My
towns?
lot
'Cause to be
wouldn't
honest,
have
I
frontage.
don't think I've ever run across that before.
How does that compare with what?
Other communities, 'cause I don't think I've ever run across that straight line distance.
That's what we, in the previous community that I worked for, that was the specific definition, was the straight line distance. And so then some people tried to jag around like a hammerhead and use all the edges of the hammerhead as being frontage, when that's really, not really the intent of what frontage is supposed to be.
How does that, does Westbrook have reduction in frontage for like a cul-de-sac?
Yeah, I'm not part of
no.
the circle, but I got enough frontage other than that, but
Frontage on a certain street.
it's a tricky one.
It's, yeah, just cluster is the only thing we do a reduction for.
I guess my own concern, and it's probably even unwarranted, is that someone gave themselves frontage to be able to do something with in the future, and now we're changing the definition such that could limit their capabilities. I don't know how realistic that is either.
Well, if it was created before the time of the ordinance, wouldn't they be a grandfathered lot? Yeah, there would be a grandfathered lot as of the time in which that lot was created. So if you've already created a lot based upon the definition at the time, especially like when we do changes of lot sizes, if you are a lot size that was legal as of the time of the ordinance before we made a change, you're still a legal lot of record.
So you could still go forward, even if it was a vacant parcel, you could still go forward with a project or development.
If it was prior to this ordinance?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I guess I'll have to think about that more.
Yep, you can chew on that, and then let us know. The other statements, we just clarify for now, new technologies with media studios by including like podcasts.
Nobody's listening to you.
Nobody's listening to me. And then we add in the term aquariums to museums, because we felt that that's also, that's a similar.
We have an aquarium.
You never know.
They're coming.
And we also had to clarify
safe,
on research and development, our traditional term that we use regarding medical marijuana. Light manufacturing, we have a definition of manufacturing, but we don't have a definition for light manufacturing, and we actually have, we have it listed as a permitted use, but we have no definition for it. So we're trying to create definitions for things that we allow for uses within the community.
They're gonna start screaming.
But when you look at the manufacturing district, how it's set up differently than any of our other districts as to how it lists out uses. So we're trying to clean up the manufacturing district standards so that that looks exactly like how we have every other district laid out with uses. And is there any other questions as it relates to?
No, looks good. Good job.
I love it.
Sneak some stuff in, you really want to get.
Are you, was that the last section of that?
The GIS.
Oh, yeah.
So there's just a statement within our GIS requirements and site plan and subdivision that we want to be consistent with what now our GIS coordinator is asking for projects to
Given his
come in
life-
with.
his life
So this was
story, his
requested
up-
from engineering to have
Yeah.
this statement upgraded to what
That's
our
good.
GIS department wishes to have for the files. That was in subdivision.
Mr. Chair, I
You want to lengthen the meeting?
I do. I'm going to be the throw the wrench in here. No, I talked with Jenny by email about a section of the ordinance that applies to unusable land for the calculation of net residential density.
Yeah.
And one of the criteria is wetlands that have been defined by the forget the verbiage of it.
Oh, Casco Bay.
Casco Bay's evaluation, which is no longer in existence. So I would recommend that she move forward with trying to find some language that can be replaced in there, maybe referencing the 1987 wetland delineation standard that everyone else uses.
I can incorporate that into the administrative document that we bring back before you.
And it doesn't really change the way we've been interpreting it, it just
Clears up the line.
clears it up and, because at this point, if someone wanted to be, they could try to challenge that determination that the city's made, but if we clarify it, then they can.
Well, you know how lawyers are.
Oh, John. Oh, John.
You still here, John? Where was your son tonight?
Sleeping at home instead of right there.
Yes.
Are we through at this point?
Yes, sir, thank you.
You'll go to public hearing on all those things and see what we can do.
Yes.
Everybody's all set? Want to hang around for a while?
We do have milers.
Meeting's over.
All right.
Watch to see the light.